Welcome aboard, friends. You're now tuned into Harry's. We're super excited to share today's story with you. What if Harry's Patronus was a Nundu and its breath could kill 1,000 Death Eaters? If you enjoy what we do here, the best way to support us is by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We read every comment. Ready? Let's go. Chapter 1, The Breath of Change Again. Harry shouted, his voice carrying across the room of requirement. Remember, focus on your happiest memory, make it specific, make it powerful. 24 wands raised in unison. A chorus of Expecto Patronum filled the air as wisps of silver light erupted from wand tips. Most faded quickly, but a few took shape. Ginny's horse galloped overhead, Luna's hair bounced between students, and Hermione's otter swam graceful circles around her. That's it. Harry walked between the practicing DA members, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Seamus, you're getting closer. The mist is taking form, keep concentrating. Easy for you to say, Seamus grumbled good-naturedly, his forehead beaded with sweat. Some of us weren't casting fully corporeal Patronuses at 13. Ron snorted. He's got you there, mate. Harry grinned, feeling the familiar warmth that came with these sessions. 6 months after the Department of Mysteries disaster, the DA had become more than just a study group, it was preparation for the war they all knew was coming. Dumbledore had officially sanctioned their meetings this year, though Harry suspected it was partially so the headmaster could keep tabs on him. All right everyone, Harry called, let me demonstrate once more, then we'll wrap up for the night. The room quieted. Even after all these months of lessons, students still watched in awe when Harry cast his Patronus. He closed his eyes, searching for his memory, flying on Buckbeak, winning the Quidditch Cup, his parents in the Mirror of Erist. But tonight, unbidden, another memory surfaced, Sirius laughing in the kitchen at Grimmauld Place last Christmas. A sharp pain lanced through Harry's chest. Sirius was gone now, fallen through the veil because Harry had been too stupid, too reckless, no. Harry forced the thought away, focusing instead on the warmth of that memory, of having something like family for that brief time. Expecto Patronum. Silver light erupted from his wand, brighter than usual, almost blinding. Harry shielded his eyes, expecting to see his stag prancing forward. Instead, the light condensed into something entirely different. Where prongs should have stood, a massive feline crouched, easily the size of a small elephant. Its spectral body rippled with powerful muscles beneath a coat that seemed to shimmer between solid and mist. An ethereal mane framed its face, and its eyes glowed with inner light. Most disturbing was the creature's mouth, which emitted a visible, swirling vapor that pooled around its massive paws. Hermione gasped. Harry, that's a Nundu, Luna finished, her dreamy voice tinged with awe. They're incredibly rare. Dad says their breath can kill 1,000 wizards at once. The room erupted in whispers. The Patronus turned its massive head toward Harry, studying him with intelligent eyes that no normal Patronus should possess. When it padded toward him, several students backed away. Harry, Hermione hissed, something's wrong. That's not your Patronus. But it was. Harry could feel the connection, the same warmth and protection his stag had always provided, but now overlaid with something else, a fierce, predatory strength that responded to the anger and grief he'd been carrying since Sirius died. The Nundu circled him once, its breath leaving silver trails in the air, then stopped and looked toward the door. Harry followed its gaze. Nothing was there, yet the Nundu growled, a sound that shouldn't be possible for a Patronus, and took a protective stance before him. I think that's enough for tonight, Harry said, suddenly uneasy. With a flick of his wand, he dismissed the Patronus, but it took 3 attempts before the massive cat dissolved into wisps of light. The room remained silent for several seconds before exploding into conversation. Blimey, Harry. Did you see the size of that thing? Since when can your Patronus change? Ron pushed through the crowd. Bloody hell, mate. That was intense. Language, Ron, Hermione said automatically, but her eyes never left Harry's face. "Harry, Patronuses don't just change form without significant emotional upheaval. And they certainly don't behave like that," it was almost autonomous. "It's been a rough year," Harry said quietly, not meeting her eyes. "A Nundu though," Neville said, looking pale. "Gran told me about them. They're supposed to be the most dangerous creatures in the world. Even 100 trained wizards have trouble subduing one. Why would your Patronus take that form?" Ginny asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Harry shrugged, trying to appear casual while his mind raced. "No idea. Maybe it's temporary." "We should tell Dumbledore," Hermione insisted. "No," Harry said, more forcefully than intended. The last thing he needed was Dumbledore thinking he was more unstable than he already appeared. "At least, not yet. Let me try to figure this out first." Hermione looked ready to argue, but the clock chimed 9, signaling curfew in 30 minutes. "We need to get back to our common rooms," Harry said, grateful for the interruption. "Remember to stagger your departures. And," he hesitated, "maybe keep what happened tonight quiet for now." Most nodded, though Harry noticed several Ravenclaws exchange doubtful looks. Information this interesting wouldn't stay secret long. As the room emptied, Harry hung back with Ron and Hermione. The moment the door closed behind the last student, Hermione rounded on him. "Harry, this is serious. Patronuses reflect the caster's innermost self. If yours has changed to the most deadly magical creature in existence, you think I don't know that?" Harry ran a hand through his already messy hair. "I don't understand it either, but I need time to process this before the whole school starts whispering about me being the next Dark Lord or whatever rubbish they'll come up with." "No one would think that," Ron said, then paused. "Well, maybe Malfoy. And Snape. And probably the Slytherins. And, not helping, Ronald," Hermione cut in. She sighed, her expression softening. "I'll research Patronus changes in the library. There might be precedent." "Thanks, Hermione," Harry said, relieved. "I'll try casting it again tomorrow, see if it was just a one-off." "And if it wasn't?" Ron asked. Harry had no answer. By breakfast the next morning, whispers followed Harry through the corridors. "So much for keeping it quiet. Did you hear? Potter's Patronus is some kind of monster now. My cousin was there, said it nearly attacked someone. Bet he's been learning dark arts." Harry kept his eyes fixed on his plate as he stabbed at his eggs with unnecessary force. "Ignore them," Hermione whispered, sliding onto the bench beside him. Her hair was disheveled, and she carried an enormous stack of books. "I was in the library at dawn. The good news is, Patronuses can change after emotional trauma. Tonks's did last year, remember?" "What's the bad news?" Harry asked, already knowing the answer. "I can't find any record of a Nundu Patronus. Ever." She opened the topmost book, Magical Guardians, a complete history of the Patronus charm. "According to this, predatory creatures are uncommon but not unheard of. There are records of wolves, panthers, even a manticore once. But nothing about a Nundu. Brilliant. Another way I'm a freak." "You're not a freak," Hermione said automatically. "But we should at least tell Professor McGonagall." Harry was saved from answering by the morning mail. As owls swooped overhead delivering packages and letters, Hermione's daily profit landed in her pumpkin juice. She fished it out, unfolded the damp paper, and gasped. "What is it?" Ron asked through a mouthful of sausage. "Voldemort attacked someone else." Hermione wordlessly turned the paper around. On the front page, a large headline declared, "Ministry confirms, Dark Wizard activity reaches crisis level, special measures to be implemented at Hogwarts, they're sending another inspector," Hermione said, scanning the article. "After last night's attack in Devon, what attack?" Harry grabbed the paper. 3 families killed. All Muggle-born wizards. Hermione's voice dropped to a whisper. The dark mark was floating above all three houses. Harry felt sick. More deaths. More families destroyed because he hadn't managed to stop Voldemort at the Ministry. It gets worse, Ron said, pointing to the bottom of the page. Look who they're sending. In a smaller article, beneath a photo of a simpering, toad-like woman, the headline read, Dolores Umbridge appointed Special Ministry Observer. Former Hogwarts High Inquisitor returns to monitor security concerns. No, Harry breathed. How is she even still employed after what she did last year? Politics, Hermione said grimly. She's claiming everything was authorized in the fight against dangerous elements at Hogwarts. And with Fudge gone, the new minister is keeping former officials close to monitor them. She can't use those blood quills again, can she? Neville asked, leaning across the table. Gran nearly marched to the ministry herself when I told her. Dumbledore won't allow it, Hermione assured him. But she'll still have ministry authority to observe classes, student activities. Like the DA, Harry finished. He looked up at the staff table, where the professors were engaged in urgent conversation. McGonagall looked furious, while Dumbledore appeared merely thoughtful. When does she arrive? Today, Hermione replied, folding the paper. The article says she's specifically monitoring 4 potentially dangerous magical anomalies that could pose security risks. Like a student whose Patronus just turned into a creature that can kill 1,000 wizards. Ron asked, wincing when Hermione elbowed him. Just saying, timing suspicious. There's no way she could know already, Hermione reasoned. The appointment was probably in process before last night. Harry wasn't convinced. Something about the coincidence felt wrong. We have defense against the dark arts first period, he said, pushing away his untouched breakfast. Let's get there early. I want to talk to Snape before class. Ron choked on his pumpkin juice. You want to talk to Snape? Voluntarily? He knows more about dark arts than anyone else here, Harry said reluctantly. If there's something wrong with my Patronus, if it's been corrupted somehow, he might recognize it. That's, actually quite logical, Hermione said, looking surprised. Don't sound so shocked. Harry managed a small grin. I occasionally have good ideas. The defense classroom was empty when they arrived, but Snape's office door stood ajar, lamplight spilling into the gloomy room. Harry approached alone, having convinced Ron and Hermione to wait outside. This conversation would be difficult enough without an audience. He knocked on the door frame. Professor? Snape looked up from his desk, his expression immediately souring. Potter. Class does not begin for another 20 minutes. I need to ask you something. About dark magic. A flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, crossed Snape's face before his usual contempt returned. Has your arrogance progressed to actively seeking dark knowledge now? Your father would be proud. Harry bit back a retort. It's about the Patronus charm, sir. Mine, changed. Patronuses can change, Potter. Surely even your limited intelligence can grasp that concept. It changed to a Nundu. That got Snape's attention. He set down his quill and studied Harry with piercing eyes. When? Last night. During DA practice. Show me. Harry hesitated. Here. Now. No, Potter, next week in the Great Hall, Snape sneered. Yes, now. Harry drew his wand, focusing on the same memory of Sirius from last night. Expecto Patronum. Silver light burst from his wand, but instead of forming immediately, it swirled in chaotic patterns before finally condensing into the massive Nundu. The creature was even larger than before, its ethereal mane rippling with energy, its breath creating a thick silver fog that pooled around Harry's feet. For once, Snape appeared genuinely startled. He stood slowly, wand half-raised, watching as the Nundu prowled the perimeter of his office. When it passed close to him, the Patronus growled, its spectral teeth bared. Fascinating, Snape murmured, his voice barely audible. It exhibits hostility. Patronuses should not be capable of aggression. Is it dark magic? Harry asked, unable to keep the concern from his voice. Snape's eyes snapped from the Nundu to Harry. What memory are you using, Potter? The question caught Harry off guard. My godfather. Last Christmas. Black. Snape's lip curled. A memory tinged with grief, then. And likely guilt. Harry stiffened. What would you know about it? Enough. Snape circled the desk, studying the Patronus from all angles. The Nundu is classified as a XXXXX creature by the Ministry, their highest danger rating. Its breath carries disease capable of eliminating entire villages. Legend claims it takes 100 skilled wizards to subdue a single Nundu. I know all that. What I don't know is why my Patronus changed into one. The Nundu had stopped prowling and now stood beside Harry, its massive head level with Harry's shoulder. The vapor from its breath seemed to respond to Harry's agitation, swirling more rapidly. The Patronus charm draws on positive emotion to create a guardian, Snape said, his tone clinical. A protector that represents the caster's innermost self or deepest associations. Your father's animagus form was a stag, hence your previous Patronus. And now? Snape's dark eyes bore into Harry's. What do you think has changed, Potter? After your reckless escapade led to Black's death? After the Dark Lord possessed you? After you've spent a year watching him torture and kill through your mental connection? The Nundu growled, a deep rumble that shouldn't have been possible for a Patronus. The mist from its breath thickened. I am not saying this happened because you are turning dark, Potter, Snape continued, surprisingly without his usual malice. The Nundu is not an evil creature, merely deadly. It is a protector that kills to defend its territory. Your Patronus has evolved to reflect your current psychological state, one where mere defense is no longer enough. Harry swallowed hard. So it's not corrupted? No. Snape returned to his desk. But it is potentially dangerous. A Patronus should not display aggression or autonomous behavior. I suggest you refrain from casting it until you better understand its capabilities. Sir, there's something else. It seemed aware last night. It looked at the door like it sensed something there. Snape paused, his expression unreadable. Dementors can be sensed by Patronuses, but there were none at Hogwarts last night. Could it sense other dark creatures? Or dark marks? A muscle twitched in Snape's jaw. That would be unprecedented. He rolled down his sleeve, covering his own mark. Class begins in 5 minutes, Potter. I suggest you dismiss your Patronus and take your seat. And Potter, his voice lowered, I would not demonstrate this particular skill when Dolores Umbridge arrives. She takes particular interest in dangerous magical anomalies these days. Harry nodded and turned to leave, then paused. Professor. Thank you. Snape merely scowled in response. By lunch, Harry's Nundu Patronus was the talk of the school. Several students asked him to demonstrate, which he firmly refused. Others gave him a wide berth, whispering behind their hands as he passed. Even the professors seemed to be watching him more closely. You'd think they'd have better things to worry about, Ron complained as they left Transfiguration. Like, I don't know, the actual war happening outside. A Patronus changing to a creature that dangerous is significant, Ron, Hermione said. Especially given Harry's unique situation. Harry knew what she meant. His connection to Voldemort made anything unusual about his magic cause for concern. Still, Snape's assessment had been oddly reassuring. If the Sour Potions master wasn't worried about dark influence, perhaps the change was simply a reflection of Harry's anger and grief. They were heading toward the Great Hall when a high-pitched, girlish voice stopped them cold. Mr. Potter. Just the student I've been hoping to see. Harry turned slowly. Dolores Umbridge stood in the corridor, wearing the same revolting pink cardigan as last year. Her toad-like smile hadn't changed either. "Professor Umbridge," Harry said stiffly. "Welcome back to Hogwarts." "How kind of you to say so," she simpered, though her eyes remained cold. "I was just speaking with some of your classmates about the most fascinating rumor, something about your Patronus taking an unusual form. As Ministry observer for potentially dangerous magical phenomena, I'm naturally quite interested." Of course she was. Harry forced his expression to remain neutral. "Just a variation, Professor. Nothing important." "Oh, I think a student's Patronus transforming into a Class XXXXX beast is quite important, Mr. Potter." Her smile widened. "Perhaps you could demonstrate?" "For official Ministry records, of course." "Harry doesn't have to show you anything," Hermione said, stepping forward. "The Patronus charm isn't part of our curriculum this year, and there's no educational reason. I don't believe I was addressing you, Miss Granger." Umbridge's voice hardened. "My authority comes directly from the Minister for Magic. In these dangerous times, any unusual magical manifestation must be properly documented." Students were gathering now, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest. Harry felt trapped. If he refused, Umbridge would only make things worse, but demonstrating the Nundu would play right into her hands. "I'd be happy to demonstrate, Professor," he said finally, with Professor Dumbledore present. "Since this is an official Ministry request, the headmaster should be involved, don't you think?" Umbridge's smile faltered. "That won't be necessary. Actually, I believe it is entirely necessary, Dolores." Professor McGonagall strode down the corridor, her emerald robes billowing behind her. Students parted before her like water. "The headmaster takes a keen interest in all official Ministry interactions with his students," McGonagall continued, stopping beside Harry. "Particularly when those students are being asked to perform advanced magic outside of class." Umbridge's face flushed pink. "Minerva, as I was explaining to Mr. Potter, I have the authority to observe." "Yes," McGonagall interrupted. "Not to request demonstrations or conduct examinations. Those privileges were part of your former position as High Inquisitor, which, you may recall, no longer exists." A few students snickered, quickly silenced by Umbridge's glare. "Very well," she said, her voice honey-sweet again. "We'll schedule a proper demonstration with the headmaster present. How does tomorrow afternoon sound, Mr. Potter? 4 o'clock in the headmaster's office?" Before Harry could answer, McGonagall spoke. "Mr. Potter has Quidditch practice tomorrow afternoon, I'm afraid. Perhaps next week, after you've submitted the proper paperwork requesting a student examination." "I wasn't aware paperwork was needed for simple, all official Ministry interactions with students require documentation now, Dolores. New policy after last year's irregularities." McGonagall's tone made it clear exactly what irregularities she meant. "Now, I believe lunch is being served, and my students need proper nutrition before their afternoon classes." With that, she gestured for Harry, Ron, and Hermione to proceed toward the Great Hall. As they walked away, Harry heard Umbridge's sickly sweet voice, "This isn't over, Minerva. The Ministry has serious concerns about Potter's magical development." McGonagall waited until they were out of earshot before speaking. "Potter, a word." She led them to an empty classroom, closed the door, and cast a privacy charm. When she turned to face them, her expression was grave. "I assume the rumors about your Patronus are true?" Harry nodded. "It changed last night, Professor. I don't know why. Professor Snape informed me. I must ask you to be extremely cautious about demonstrating this new Patronus, particularly around Dolores Umbridge. The Ministry is looking for any excuse to intervene at Hogwarts, and you," she hesitated, "have always been of special interest to them." "Professor," Hermione said, "I've been researching Patronus changes, but I can't find any mention of a Nundu Patronus in any of the books I've checked." "That's because there has never been one recorded, Miss Granger." McGonagall adjusted her spectacles. "The Nundu is not merely dangerous, it is considered by many to be death incarnate. Its breath doesn't just kill, it annihilates. Cheery, Ron muttered. McGonagall ignored him. Potter, I want you to come to my office tonight after dinner. We need to test the capabilities of this Patronus in a controlled environment. Yes, Professor, Harry agreed, relieved that someone was taking charge. And Potter? Until then, please refrain from casting it, no matter how much Dolores Umbridge prods you. Expecto Patronum. The silver Nundu erupted from Harry's wand, larger and more defined than before. It prowled around McGonagall's office, its ethereal paws making no sound on the stone floor. Its breath, now a thick, swirling mist, left temporary silver patterns where it touched the walls. McGonagall observed from behind her desk, her expression a mixture of concern and fascination. Beside her, Professor Flitwick stood on a chair, taking notes on a long piece of parchment. Most extraordinary, Flitwick squeaked. The corporeality is remarkable, almost solid in appearance. And the autonomous behavior. It's investigating the room independently. The Nundu had indeed begun examining the office on its own, sniffing at bookshelves and peering into shadowy corners. When it approached Flitwick, the tiny professor squeaked in alarm, but the Patronus merely studied him before moving on. It doesn't seem aggressive now, Harry noted. There are no threats present, McGonagall said. Phileas, your assessment. Flitwick tapped his wand against his chin. The Patronus charm creates a guardian that reflects the caster's protective instincts. Mr. Potter's previous stag represented his father's protection. This new form. He hesitated. The Nundu is considered the most lethal magical beast in existence. For it to appear as a Patronus suggests Mr. Potter's protective instinct has evolved to include the capacity for lethal force. Is that bad? Harry asked hesitantly. Not inherently, McGonagall answered. But it is unusual. Patronuses are primarily defensive, they shield against dementors by representing joy and hope. They cannot normally harm physical beings. But mine might be different. Flitwick and McGonagall exchanged looks. We don't know, Flitwick admitted. Which is why we need to test it under controlled conditions. McGonagall stood and moved to a cabinet in the corner. She withdrew what looked like a glass case containing a small, shadowy creature that writhed and pressed against the glass. This is a lesser shadow wraith, she explained. Similar to a dementor but much weaker. We use them in advanced newt training. She placed the case on her desk and looked at Harry. I want you to direct your Patronus toward the case, not to attack, but simply to approach it. Harry nodded, feeling a knot of anxiety. Go, he told the Nundu, pointing at the case. The Patronus padded smoothly toward the desk, its silver eyes fixed on the shadowy creature. As it drew near, the wraith began to thrash more violently. The Nundu growled, that same impossible sound Harry had heard before, and the vapor from its mouth thickened, curling toward the glass case. Where the mist touched the glass, frost patterns formed. The wraith shrieked, a tiny, distant sound, and pressed itself against the far side of the case, as far from the Nundu's breath as possible. Remarkable, Flitwick whispered. It's demonstrating actual offensive capabilities. Harry, McGonagall said sharply, can you control the Nundu's breath? Harry frowned, concentrating. He could feel the connection to the Patronus, stronger than with his stag, more tangible somehow. He focused on the vapor streaming from its mouth, willing it to dissipate. Slowly, the mist thinned, then stopped altogether. The Nundu turned its massive head toward Harry, as if awaiting further instructions. Now directed again, but with intent to neutralize the wraith, McGonagall instructed. Harry hesitated. You want me to try to harm it? Shadow wraiths aren't sentient, Potter. Think of it as a magical exercise. Still uneasy, Harry focused on the Nundu again. This time, he channeled his frustration with Umbridge, his anger at the Death Eaters mentioned in that morning's prophet. Go on, he told the Patronus. Show us what you can do. The Nundu turned back to the case. Its mouth opened wider, and a concentrated stream of silver vapor shot toward the glass. The mist penetrated the case despite its sealed nature, passing through like a ghost, and enveloped the wraith. The creature convulsed once, then dissolved into wisps of black smoke that quickly dissipated. The glass case was empty. Merlin's beard, Flitwick breathed. It destroyed it completely. McGonagall looked pale. In all my years, I've never seen a Patronus with destructive capabilities against anything other than Dementors. What does this mean? Harry asked, his mouth dry. It means, Mr. Potter, McGonagall said slowly, that you possess a Patronus capable of attacking dark creatures, possibly dark wizards, directly. A weapon, not just a shield. But Patronuses can't hurt humans, Hermione said from her position by the wall, where she and Ron had been watching silently. That's fundamental magical theory. Theory evolves, Miss Granger, Flitwick replied. And Mr. Potter has a habit of redefining magical limitations. McGonagall was still staring at the empty case. We need to inform the headmaster immediately. And Potter, her voice was deadly serious, you must exercise extreme caution. If Dolores Umbridge discovers your Patronus can destroy dark creatures, the Ministry will take a very keen interest indeed. Harry nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of yet another dangerous ability he never asked for. Professor, he asked, why is this happening now? Why did my Patronus change? McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Trauma changes us, Potter. Perhaps your magic is simply responding to the challenges you face. She straightened. For now, dismiss your Patronus. We'll continue this discussion with the headmaster present. As Harry waved his wand to dispel the Nundu, he couldn't shake the feeling that this change, like so many others in his life, was somehow connected to Voldemort, and that it would not end well. The weekend arrived without Harry being summoned to Dumbledore's office. McGonagall had reported their findings to the headmaster, but he was frequently absent these days, pursuing some secret mission he shared with no one. Meanwhile, Umbridge had been surprisingly quiet, though Harry often caught her watching him during meals, her toad-like face set in a calculating expression. The Ministry paperwork McGonagall mentioned seemed to be delaying her, but Harry knew it was only temporary. She's planning something, he told Ron and Hermione as they walked toward Hogsmeade Village that Saturday. The October air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet. I can feel it. Maybe you're just paranoid, Ron suggested. Even Umbridge can't do much with Dumbledore and McGonagall watching her. She managed plenty last year, Harry reminded him, absently rubbing the back of his hand where faint scars still read, I must not tell lies. We should use the opportunity to have fun while we can, Hermione said firmly. The whole school's been on edge since that Prophet article. She was right. The news of Death Eater attacks had everyone jumping at shadows. Even Hogsmeade seemed subdued today, fewer students had permission to visit, and those who did traveled in tight groups, wands readily accessible. They headed for the Three Broomsticks, planning to meet Neville, Luna, and Ginny for butterbeers. As they approached the pub, Harry noticed two wizards in dark cloaks watching the street from an alley. Something about their posture sent warning signals through his mind. Hold up, he murmured, slowing his pace. Something's not right. Hermione followed his gaze. Horrors, maybe. The Ministry probably increased security after the attacks. Maybe. Harry wasn't convinced. An aura would make their presence obvious to deter trouble. These men seemed to be hiding. They entered the pub, finding it half empty. Neville waved from a corner table where he sat with Luna and Ginny. Quieter than usual, Ginny noted as they joined them. Dad says lots of families are keeping their kids home now, even from Hogwarts. The Ministry's getting dozens of owls a day from parents wanting to withdraw their children. Can't blame them, Neville said. My gran nearly didn't let me come back this year. Said the only reason she did was because Dumbledore's here. And Harry, Luna added serenely. The Quibbler's latest poll shows most people believe you're the one who will defeat you-know-who, Harry. Harry nearly choked on his butterbeer. What? Since when does the Quibbler run polls? Since Dad realized people actually read our publication after the interview last year, Luna explained. We're quite respected now. Well, by some people. Others still think we're a bit odd. Despite the tension, Harry found himself smiling. Luna had that effect. The pleasant moment was shattered by screams from outside. Harry was on his feet instantly, wand in hand. Through the window, he saw people running down the main street. A flash of green light illuminated the buildings. Death Eaters, he said grimly. We need to get the younger students back to the castle. Harry, no, Hermione began, but he was already moving toward the door, Ron and Ginny right behind him. Outside, chaos reigned. At least 6 masked figures were firing curses indiscriminately. One shop was already ablaze, smoke billowing into the autumn sky. The few adults present were attempting to fight back, but they were outmatched. Third years, this way. Harry shouted, directing a group of terrified younger students toward the path to Hogwarts. Ron, Ginny, get them safely to the castle. Ron hesitated. What about you? I'll help hold them off, Harry said, ducking as a red jet of light shot overhead. Neville, Luna, can you check Honeydukes? There might be students trapped inside. They nodded and took off running. Harry turned to Hermione. Find McGonagall or any professor. We need help. Harry, you can't fight them alone, I'm not planning to, he assured her, though they both knew it was a lie. Go. As Hermione reluctantly ran toward the castle, Harry assessed the situation. 6 Death Eaters, maybe more. No sign of Aurors yet. Professor Flitwick was dueling one attacker near the post office, while Madame Rosmerta defended a group of students behind an overturned cart. Harry spotted one Death Eater advancing on a fallen woman, wand raised for what would surely be a killing curse. Without thinking, he aimed his wand. Stupefy. The red bolt struck the Death Eater between the shoulder blades, dropping him instantly. But the attack revealed Harry's position. 2 masked figures turned toward him, and he recognized Bellatrix Lestrange's wild hair beneath one hood. Baby Potter, all alone, she cackled, sending a purple curse spiraling toward him. Harry dove behind a rain barrel, which exploded in a shower of wood and water. He rolled to his feet, casting a shield charm just in time to deflect another curse. Confringo, he shouted, aiming at the ground near their feet. The explosion sent both Death Eaters stumbling backward, giving Harry a moment to dash toward better cover. All around him, the battle intensified. More Order members had arrived. Harry glimpsed Tonks's bright hair as she dueled near Scrivenshafts. But the Death Eaters were pressing their advantage, herding frightened villagers and students into the center of town. A cold sensation washed over Harry, the familiar, dreadful feeling of Dementors approaching. Above the village, dark shapes appeared against the sky, gliding toward the panicked crowd. No, Harry breathed. The creatures were heading straight for the students Ron and Ginny were escorting. There were at least a dozen Dementors, far too many for the others to handle. Harry knew what he had to do, despite the risk. He raised his wand, focusing on his happiest memory, not of Sirius this time, but of his friends, of the DA, of the family he had built for himself. Expecto Patronum. Light exploded from his wand, brighter than ever before, almost blinding. The silver Nundu materialized, enormous and terrifying, its spectral body radiating power. It stood beside Harry, its massive head level with his shoulder, silver vapor pouring from its open mouth. For a moment, the battle seemed to pause. Both Death Eaters and Defenders stared in shock at the impossible Patronus. Then, with a roar that echoed through the village, the Nundu charged toward the Dementors. It moved with incredible speed, leaving a trail of silver mist in its wake. When it reached the dark creatures, it didn't merely drive them back as a normal Patronus would. Instead, it leapt upon the nearest Dementor, its ethereal teeth sinking into the hooded figure. The Dementor let out an unearthly shriek, a sound Harry had never heard before, and dissolved into wisps of black smoke. The other Dementors scattered, fleeing in all directions, but the Nundu gave chase, its breath forming a silver cloud that enveloped two more of the creatures. Like the first, they disintegrated, leaving nothing behind. "Impossible," someone whispered nearby. Harry turned to see Professor McGonagall staring at the scene, her face pale with shock. But Harry had no time to explain. Bellatrix had recovered from her surprise and was advancing again, her face contorted with rage. "What dark magic is this, Potter?" she snarled, firing a jet of green light that Harry barely avoided. "The Dark Lord will be most interested." Harry didn't respond, focusing instead on the battle. With the Dementors retreating, the tide was turning. Order members were pressing the Death Eaters back, and more help was arriving from the castle. But Bellatrix wasn't retreating. She fired curse after curse, driving Harry back toward an alley. He deflected what he could, but she was too skilled, too relentless. A cutting hex caught his arm, slicing through his jacket and into the flesh beneath. Blood soaked his sleeve. "Getting tired, Potter," she taunted. "Where's your beastie now? Called something you can't control." The Nundu was still chasing Dementors on the other side of the village. Harry could feel the connection to it stretching thin with distance. He needed to end this quickly. "Expelliarmus," he shouted, then immediately followed with, "Stupefy," and "Impedimenta." Bellatrix blocked the first two but had to dive to avoid the third, giving Harry an opening. He concentrated with all his might, calling the Nundu back to him. The massive Patronus responded instantly, abandoning its pursuit to race back toward Harry. Bellatrix regained her footing, raising her wand for another attack. "No more games, Potter." Avada, the Nundu burst into the alley, positioning itself between Harry and Bellatrix. As she completed her curse, the Patronus exhaled a concentrated stream of silver vapor directly at her. The killing curse struck the mist and dissipated harmlessly, while the vapor continued toward Bellatrix. When it touched her, something extraordinary happened. Bellatrix screamed, not in pain, but in shock. The sleeve of her robe tore itself apart, revealing the dark mark on her forearm. The mark seemed to writhe on her skin, the snake twisting as if in agony. What have you done?" she gasped, clutching her arm. The Nundu growled, advancing slowly. More vapor poured from its mouth, surrounding Bellatrix completely. She tried to apparate, but something, the mist itself, perhaps, prevented her. As the vapor thickened, she sank to her knees, still clutching her arm where the dark mark now bled black ichor. "Potter." McGonagall's voice cut through Harry's concentration. She stood at the entrance to the alley, her wand raised. "Stop this now." Harry blinked, suddenly aware of what was happening. The Nundu was attacking Bellatrix directly, affecting her through the dark mark. If he didn't stop it, it might kill her. Despite everything Bellatrix had done, killing Sirius, torturing Neville's parents, Harry couldn't bring himself to be her executioner. "Enough," he commanded the Patronus. "Come back." The Nundu hesitated, silver eyes fixed on the weakened Death Eater. For a terrifying moment, Harry thought it might disobey. Then, slowly, it backed away, the vapor dissipating. Bellatrix remained on her knees, breathing heavily. McGonagall moved forward cautiously, her wand trained on the Death Eater. "Incarcerus," she said, and ropes bound Bellatrix securely. "Minerva," Bellatrix spat, though her voice lacked its usual venom. "You have no idea what you're harboring." "The Dark Lord will, that's quite enough," McGonagall interrupted. She looked at Harry, her expression unreadable. "Potter, dismiss your Patronus and return to the castle immediately. Professor Dumbledore will want to speak with you." Harry nodded, too exhausted to argue. With a wave of his wand, he dismissed the Nundu, watching as it dissolved into wisps of silver light. The sudden absence of its protective presence left him feeling vulnerable and drained. As he turned to leave, a flash of pink caught his eye. Standing at the end of the alley, her face a mixture of fear and triumph, was Dolores Umbridge. She had seen everything. "Well, Mr. Potter," she said, her girlish voice at odds with her calculating expression. "I believe the Ministry will be most interested in this development." Most interested indeed. Chapter 2, The Hunter's Moon. News of Harry's Nundu Patronus spread through Hogwarts like fiendfire. By breakfast the next day, the story had evolved from Harry Potter's Patronus scared away some Dementors to Harry Potter obliterated a dozen Dementors and nearly killed Bellatrix Lestrange with some kind of ancient death magic. "This is ridiculous," Hermione huffed, tossing aside the Daily Prophet. The front page blared, "Boy who lived manifests deadly magical beast," above a photo of Harry looking confused and exhausted as he returned to the castle. "They're making it sound like you summoned an actual Nundu." Harry stabbed at his eggs, keeping his head down as whispers followed him across the great hall. "Is it true Bellatrix's dark mark was bleeding?" he asked quietly. Ron glanced around before leaning in. "Dad says she's in a secure ward at St. Mungo's. They're not sure what happened to her arm, but the mark looks damaged somehow. Like it's been burned from the inside." Harry felt a chill. He hadn't meant to cause that kind of injury, no matter how much he hated Bellatrix. "And the Dementors?" "Gone," Hermione whispered. "Not just driven away. Gone. The Ministry's in an uproar." "Potter." Harry turned to find Professor McGonagall standing behind him, her expression tight. "The headmaster wishes to see you. Immediately." "Here we go," Ron muttered as Harry stood to follow her. McGonagall led him through corridors emptying for first classes. Students stopped to stare as they passed, conversations halting mid-sentence. One first-year Hufflepuff actually squeaked in fear and darted into a classroom. "They're treating me like I'm Voldemort himself," Harry said bitterly. McGonagall's pace didn't slow. "What you did yesterday was unprecedented, Potter. People fear what they don't understand. I was just trying to protect everyone. I know that. But your methods." She stopped at the stone gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office. "Acid pops." As they ascended the spiral staircase, Harry braced himself for whatever awaited him. He hadn't seen Dumbledore since the Department of Mysteries disaster, their meetings limited to brief, formal exchanges about Harry's special lessons that had yet to materialize. The headmaster's office was more crowded than Harry expected. Dumbledore sat behind his desk, looking weary but alert. Beside him stood Kingsley Shacklebolt, his aura robes impeccably pressed. Umbridge occupied a chair near the window, practically quivering with barely concealed excitement. And most surprisingly, Minister for Magic Rufus Scrimgeour paced before the fireplace, his tawny hair and yellowish eyes giving him the appearance of an old lion. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore said pleasantly. "Thank you for joining us. I believe you know everyone present." Harry nodded stiffly, trying to ignore Umbridge's predatory smile. "Have a seat," Scrimgeour said, gesturing to a chair in the center of the room. It felt uncomfortably like being positioned for an interrogation. "We've been discussing yesterday's incident in Hogsmeade," Dumbledore explained once Harry was seated. "Most specifically, your rather remarkable Patronus." "Most remarkable indeed," Umbridge simpered. "One might even say dangerous." Scrimgeour shot her a quelling glance. "What Dolores means is that your Patronus demonstrated capabilities we've never seen before. The ability to physically affect, even destroy, Dementors is unprecedented. Not to mention what it did to Bellatrix Lestrange," Kingsley added, his deep voice neutral. "I didn't mean to hurt her," Harry said quickly. "I just wanted to stop her from casting the killing curse." "No one is suggesting you intended harm, Harry," Dumbledore assured him. "But the Ministry is naturally concerned about a magical manifestation of this power." "Concerned?" Umbridge's voice rose an octave. "Headmaster, this goes beyond concern. Mr. Potter has somehow created a lethal variant of the Patronus charm, a charm that should be purely defensive. This represents a fundamental violation of magical principles and poses a serious threat to— That's enough, Dolores, Scrimgeour interrupted. We're here to gather facts, not make accusations. He turned to Harry, his expression calculating. Mr. Potter, when did your Patronus first change form? Harry explained about the DA session, carefully omitting any mention of Snape's observations about the dark mark. When he described the Hogsmeade attack, Kingsley asked penetrating questions about how the Nundu had responded to his commands. So it demonstrated autonomy, Kingsley summarized. Acting independently to pursue Dementors before you recalled it. I suppose so, Harry admitted. But it still followed my orders. Eventually, Umbridge said pointedly. Scrimgeour rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The Ministry has protocols for unusual magical manifestations, particularly those with potential defensive applications. Given the current climate, I believe it would be in everyone's best interest if Mr. Potter received specialized training to control this ability. I couldn't agree more, Minister, Dumbledore said smoothly. I've already arranged for Professors Flitwick and McGonagall to work with Harry. With all due respect, Headmaster, Scrimgeour countered, this situation requires Ministry oversight. I propose Harry spend weekends at the Department of Mysteries, where our unspeakables can properly study. Absolutely not, Harry interrupted. Everyone stared at him, and he felt his face flush but continued anyway. The last time I was at the Department of Mysteries, my godfather died. I'm not going back there to be some Ministry experiment. Umbridge made a small, outraged noise, but Scrimgeour merely raised an eyebrow. Bold words, Mr. Potter. But perhaps you misunderstand. This isn't a request. Actually, Minister, Dumbledore said, his voice suddenly cooler, it would require both my approval as headmaster and Harry's guardian's consent to remove him from school for such purposes. As his magical guardian following Sirius Black's unfortunate passing, I must decline. The tension in the room thickened. Scrimgeour and Dumbledore locked eyes in a silent battle of wills. There are other options, Kingsley suggested diplomatically. Perhaps Ministry experts could come to Hogwarts, work alongside the professors already training Harry. An excellent compromise, Dumbledore agreed before Scrimgeour could refuse. I'm sure Harry would benefit from additional instruction, provided it doesn't interfere with his studies. Harry wanted to protest, the last thing he needed was more Ministry officials watching his every move, but McGonagall caught his eye and gave a tiny, warning shake of her head. Very well, Scrimgeour said finally. Auror Shacklebolt, I'm assigning you as Ministry liaison for this project. You'll coordinate with Hogwarts staff and report directly to me. Kingsley nodded, his face impassive, though Harry thought he detected relief in the Auror's eyes. At least it would be Kingsley, an Order member, and not some unknown Ministry stooge. In the meantime, Scrimgeour continued, Mr. Potter will refrain from casting this particular Patronus except during supervised training sessions. Is that clear? Yes, Minister, Harry replied stiffly. One more thing, Umbridge interjected sweetly. Given the potentially dangerous nature of this magic, perhaps Mr. Potter should surrender his wand while not in classes or training. As a precautionary measure. That won't be necessary, Dolores, Scrimgeour said, surprising Harry. Mr. Potter is a student in good standing, and these are dangerous times. Disarming him would be irresponsible. Dumbledore stood, signaling the meeting's end. I believe we've reached a reasonable arrangement. Harry will receive training from both Hogwarts professors and Ministry experts, with appropriate safeguards in place. Now, if you'll excuse us, Harry has classes to attend. As McGonagall led Harry from the office, he heard Umbridge's voice behind him, Minister, I really must insist we classify Potter as a Type 3 magical anomaly, requiring enhanced surveillance. The door closed before he could hear Scrimgeour's response. What's a Type 3 magical anomaly? Harry asked as they descended the stairs. McGonagall's lips thinned. A ministry classification for wizards or witches who manifest unusual magical abilities that might pose security concerns. It's rarely used, typically only for cases like unregistered metamorph magi or those with uncontrolled elemental affinities. And if they classify me as one, it would allow them certain, monitoring privileges. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking at Harry directly. Which is why the headmaster will ensure it doesn't happen. Now, you'd best get to charms. And Potter, I know, Harry sighed. No Patronus except during training. Actually, I was going to say well done yesterday. Your actions saved lives, regardless of the ministry's concerns. Before Harry could recover from his surprise, she was gone, striding briskly down the corridor. A Type 3 magical anomaly? Hermione repeated, horrified. That's practically martial law for an individual wizard. They were in the room of requirement, which had configured itself as a cozy study space with comfortable chairs, a crackling fire, and bookshelves filled with texts on advanced defensive magic. Ron was sprawled in an armchair, while Hermione paced between towering stacks of books she'd somehow smuggled in from the library. According to Hogwarts, a history, the classification was created during Grindelwald's rise when several of his followers developed unusual magical mutations, she continued. Anyone classified as a Type 3 can have their correspondence monitored, their movements tracked, even their dreams recorded. My dreams? Harry felt ill. They're bad enough without the ministry watching them. I'm sure Dumbledore won't let it happen, Ron said, though he looked concerned. Besides, you've got Kingsley on your side. He'll keep the ministry off your back. Harry wasn't convinced. He'd had enough experience with ministry interference to know how quickly things could spiral out of control. What I don't understand, Hermione said, pausing by a particularly precarious stack of books, is why your Patronus affected Bellatrix's dark mark. Patron uses are pure light magic, they shouldn't interact with dark marks at all. Harry hesitated, then told them about his conversation with Snape. He didn't seem surprised when I asked if the Patronus could sense dark marks. Almost like he expected it. Blimey, Ron breathed. A Patronus that targets Death Eaters specifically? No wonder Umbridge is panicking. You could identify you-know-who's entire inner circle. It's more than that, Hermione said thoughtfully. If it can damage the dark mark itself. Harry, the mark is Voldemort's direct connection to his followers. Your Patronus might be able to sever that connection. The implications were staggering. You think that's why it changed? To give me a weapon against Death Eaters? Patron uses reflect our inner selves, Hermione said, pulling a massive tome from a nearby shelf. Your stag represented your father's protection. But after Sirius. She trailed off, glancing at Harry apologetically. After Sirius died, Harry finished for her, I needed more than protection. I needed a way to fight back. Ron sat forward. And your magic responded by giving you exactly that. But why a Nundu specifically? Harry pressed. Why not a dragon or a manticore or something? The Nundu is unique, Hermione explained, flipping through the book until she found what she was looking for. It's not just dangerous because of its size or strength, but because of its breath, an invisible killer that strikes without warning. It's the perfect counter to Death Eaters who hide behind masks and strike from shadows. That actually makes sense, Harry admitted. The question now is how to control it, Ron said. If it can really target Death Eaters through the mark, we need to figure out how to use that without, killing everyone. Ron. Hermione looked scandalized. What? I'm not saying he should kill them, just that it's a tactical advantage we'd be stupid to ignore. Harry stared at his friend in surprise. Since when did you become a strategic thinker? Ron's ears reddened. Chess, remember? Same principles, identify your opponent's weakness and exploit it. He grabbed a piece of parchment. Look, if we're stuck having these training sessions anyway, we might as well make them useful. Let's map out exactly what your Nundu can do and how to control each aspect. As Ron sketched out a surprisingly detailed plan for testing the Nundu's capabilities, Harry caught Hermione's eye. She looked as impressed as he felt. Perhaps Ron's strategic mind was exactly what they needed to turn this strange development to their advantage. Focus, Potter. Direct the breath, don't just let it flow freely. Harry gritted his teeth as sweat dripped down his forehead. The Nundu Patronus stood before him in the empty classroom, silver vapor pouring from its mouth toward a series of targets Flitwick had conjured. Each target was charmed to simulate a different level of dark magic, from mild curses to something approximating a Death Eater's signature. It was their third training session of the week, and Harry was exhausted. Despite Dumbledore's compromise, the Ministry experts had turned out to be a rotating cast of unspeakables in grey robes who watched silently, taking notes and whispering among themselves. Only Kingsley's presence made the sessions bearable. Again, Flitwick instructed. This time, try to affect only the target with the strongest dark signature. Harry wiped his brow and concentrated. The connection to the Nundu felt stronger with each session, more nuanced. He could sense the different targets through the Patronus's perception, varying shades of darkness, like heat signatures but for malevolent magic. There, he murmured, focusing on the rightmost target, which glowed blackest in the Nundu's vision. Just that one. The Nundu responded, its silver vapor condensing into a thin, directed stream that shot toward the specified target. When it made contact, the target shuddered, darkened, then crumbled to ash. The others remained untouched. Excellent. Flitwick squeaked, clapping his tiny hands. Most precise control yet. One of the unspeakables whispered something to his companion, who nodded and made a note. Harry suppressed a flare of irritation. They treated him like a laboratory specimen, never addressing him directly. I think that's enough for today, Kingsley said, stepping forward. Mr. Potter has made significant progress. Indeed he has, Flitwick agreed. Though I'm curious about one more test. He conjured a new target, this one pulsing with a different kind of energy. This simulates a cursed object, rather than a dark wizard. Let's see if the Nundu can neutralize it without destruction. Harry nodded tiredly and turned back to the Patronus, which watched him with attentive silver eyes. Cleanse it, he instructed, choosing the word carefully. Don't destroy, just remove the dark magic. The Nundu approached the target, sniffing it curiously. Instead of the vapor blast it had used before, it gently exhaled a cloud of mist that enveloped the object. Where the mist touched, the dark pulsing seemed to fade, drawn into the vapor itself which briefly darkened before brightening again to its usual silver. When the mist cleared, the target remained intact, but the dark energy was gone. Remarkable, Flitwick breathed. It absorbed the dark magic without damaging the vessel. Like a magical purifier, Kingsley added, looking thoughtful. Harry dismissed the Patronus, feeling the now familiar drain of energy that followed. Each session left him more tired than the last, as if maintaining the Nundu's advanced capabilities required more of his magical core than a normal Patronus. That will be all for today, Kingsley told the unspeakables, who filed out silently. When the door closed behind them, his professional demeanor relaxed slightly. You're making incredible progress, Harry. The level of control you demonstrated today would take most wizards months to achieve. It still feels unnatural, Harry admitted, sinking into a chair. Like the Nundu knows what to do before I do. That's not necessarily bad, Flitwick said, vanishing the remaining targets with a wave of his wand. Many advanced magical constructs develop a form of pseudo-intelligence based on the caster's subconscious knowledge and intent. You mean it's reading my mind? More like it's an extension of your protective instinct, Kingsley explained. It knows what you want to accomplish even when you can't articulate it precisely. That's what worries me, Harry said quietly. What if what I want, deep down, isn't what I should do? Neither Flitwick nor Kingsley had an answer for that. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a blur of classes, training sessions, and furtive research. The Daily Prophet continued to speculate about Harry's unprecedented magical anomaly, with theories ranging from secret ministry training programs to Harry being possessed by the spirit of a Nundu. Umbridge was quoted extensively in each article, hinting at disturbing developments that required additional security measures. Meanwhile, Ron had developed an entire tactical framework for using the Nundu Patronus in combat situations. His plans were surprisingly sophisticated, accounting for the Patronus's ability to target dark marks, neutralize curses, and even create barriers of protective mist. "You're wasted in divination," Hermione told him one evening as they reviewed his latest diagram in the common room. "You should have taken arithmancy, this is basically magical battle calculus." Ron's ears turned pink. "It's just chess thinking applied to a different board," he muttered, though he looked pleased. Harry was about to respond when he noticed Draco Malfoy watching them from across the room. The Slytherin quickly looked away, but not before Harry caught the calculating expression on his face. "Malfoy's spying on us again," he said quietly. Hermione followed his gaze. "He's been doing that a lot lately. Ever since Hogsmeade. Probably reporting to Daddy Dearest," Ron snorted. "Or directly to you-know-who now that he's old enough to join the Junior Death Eaters." Harry wasn't so sure. Malfoy looked terrible, pale and drawn, with dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight, and his usual swagger had been replaced by a hunted look that Harry recognized all too well. "I think he's scared," Harry said. "Good," Ron replied without sympathy. "After everything he's done, he should be." Before Harry could respond, the common room portrait hole opened and Ginny burst in, breathless and wide-eyed. "Harry!" She rushed to their table. "Dumbledore's looking for you. McGonagall sent me, you're to go to his office immediately." "What's happened?" Hermione asked, already gathering their notes. "Death Eaters attacked a Muggle village in Yorkshire," Ginny said, lowering her voice. The Order responded, but it was a trap. Tonks is injured, and they nearly got Lupin. Harry was already on his feet. "Was anyone else hurt?" "I don't know the details." "But Harry," Ginny grabbed his arm as he turned to leave, "McGonagall said to tell you not to do anything rash. Dumbledore has a plan." "He always does," Harry muttered, though he couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. Dumbledore's plans had a way of leaving people hurt or worse. As he left the common room, he felt Malfoy's eyes on his back, watching with an intensity that raised the hairs on his neck. Dumbledore looked older than Harry had ever seen him. The headmaster sat behind his desk, silver instruments whirring softly around him, his injured hand hidden beneath his sleeve. "Ah, Harry. Thank you for coming so quickly." "Professor," Ginny said, "there was an attack, yes, a most troubling development." Dumbledore gestured for Harry to sit. "Voldemort has changed tactics. Rather than random terror, he is now specifically targeting Order members and their families." Harry's stomach dropped. "The Weasleys are safe, for now. I've increased the protections around the burrow, and Arthur has been temporarily reassigned to a ministry position that keeps him out of public view." Relief washed through Harry, followed immediately by guilt. How many people were in danger simply because they were associated with him? "Sir, what about Tonks?" Ginny said she was injured. Nymphadora was ambushed while escorting Muggle-born families to safe houses. Her injuries are serious but not life-threatening. She is recovering at St. Mungo's under guard. Something in Dumbledore's tone caught Harry's attention. "Under guard? From Death Eaters?" "Partially," Dumbledore admitted. "But also to prevent certain ministry elements from questioning her prematurely. Which brings me to the reason I called you here." He stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the darkness. "The minister is under increasing pressure to demonstrate progress in the war against Voldemort. Your Nundu Patronus represents a potential weapon that many in the ministry wish to weaponize, shall we say." "You mean they want to use me to hunt Death Eaters?" "Precisely. Rufus Scrimgeour is a more principled man than Cornelius Fudge, but he is still a politician. The ability to identify Death Eaters through their dark marks and potentially neutralize them is too tempting to ignore. Harry thought of Bellatrix, of the black ichor bleeding from her dark mark. But sir, if it works, if it can really hurt Voldemort through the marks, shouldn't we use it? Dumbledore turned, his blue eyes grave. At what cost, Harry? The Patronus charm has always been pure, defensive magic, the embodiment of hope and joy. To twist it into a weapon, to use it to cause harm, even to those who deserve punishment, such actions leave scars on the soul. I already have plenty of those, Harry said quietly. Which is precisely why I cannot ask this of you. Dumbledore returned to his desk. However, events may force our hand. The Ministry has officially classified you as a Type 3 magical anomaly, effective tomorrow. What? Harry stood in shock. But you said, I opposed it vigorously, but was outvoted by the Wizengamot. Dolores Umbridge presented convincing evidence that your Patronus represents an unprecedented magical threat requiring special observation. Harry's hands clenched into fists. So what happens now? They lock me up somewhere to study me? Nothing so dramatic, Dumbledore assured him. You will remain at Hogwarts, continuing your education and training. But you will be assigned a Ministry observer, who will monitor your magical activities. Umbridge, Harry guessed, his stomach sinking. Actually, no. The Minister appointed Percy Weasley to the position. Harry blinked in surprise. Percy. But he's barely speaking to his family. Which makes him appear impartial while still keeping the observation within the Order's extended circle, Dumbledore explained. Kingsley suggested the arrangement, and Scrimgeour agreed. It was a clever compromise, Harry had to admit. Percy might be estranged from the Weasleys, but he wasn't actively malicious like Umbridge. There's one more thing, Harry. Dumbledore's tone grew more serious. In light of the attacks on Order members, I've decided to accelerate our special lessons. It's time you learned exactly why Voldemort tried to kill you as a child, and why he continues to pursue you now. Harry straightened. Finally, answers he'd been seeking for years. When do we start? After the Christmas holiday. Which brings me to my final point. Dumbledore smiled slightly. Despite everything, you are still a 16-year-old wizard deserving of a break. You'll be spending Christmas at the Burrow, as Molly has insisted. However, his expression sobered, I must ask you to exercise extreme caution. Your classification as a Type 3 means the Ministry will be monitoring your magic use, even outside of school. So I can't use the Nundu even if there's an attack. On the contrary. In case of genuine danger, you should use every tool at your disposal to protect yourself and others. Just be aware that any use of your Patronus will be immediately reported to the Ministry, and to Voldemort's spies within it. Harry nodded, understanding the warning. His Patronus was both his greatest weapon and his greatest liability. Now, Dumbledore said, his tone lightening, I believe your friends are waiting anxiously for news. You may tell them what I've shared, but please, exercise discretion with the wider student body. Yes, sir. Harry stood to leave, then hesitated. Professor? Do you think my Patronus changed for a reason? That it's meant to help defeat Voldemort? Dumbledore considered him thoughtfully. I believe, Harry, that magic often responds to our deepest needs in unexpected ways. Whether your Patronus is a tool for victory or a test of your character, perhaps it is both. It wasn't exactly an answer, but it was the most straightforward conversation they'd had in months. As Harry left the office, he felt strangely lighter despite the ominous news. For once, Dumbledore was treating him as a partner rather than a child to be protected. Now he just had to figure out how to use a weapon that might damage his own soul in the process. The Hogwarts Express was packed with students heading home for Christmas. Enhanced security measures meant longer lines, bag checks, and Aurors patrolling the corridors. Harry, Ron, and Hermione managed to find an empty compartment near the back of the train, where they were soon joined by Neville, Luna, and Ginny. Did you see the prophet this morning? Neville asked as the train pulled away from Hogsmeade Station. They're calling you the Ministry's secret weapon, now. Harry groaned, sinking lower in his seat. Fantastic. As if I didn't have enough titles. I think it's clever strategy, Luna observed dreamily. If Death Eaters believe you're working with the Ministry, they might be more cautious about attacking. Or more determined to eliminate the threat, Hermione pointed out. Ron snorted. Like you know who needed another reason to go after Harry. The compartment door slid open, revealing Draco Malfoy. He stood alone, unusual, as he was typically flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. What do you want, Malfoy? Ron demanded, reaching for his wand. Draco ignored him, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Harry. Potter. A word. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here, Harry replied coolly. Fine. Draco stepped into the compartment and closed the door behind him. He looked even worse up close, his skin had a grayish tinge, and his hands trembled slightly. Your little pet project with the Patronus, it's got the Dark Lord's attention. The compartment went silent. Malfoy voluntarily mentioning Voldemort was unprecedented. Why are you telling me this? Harry asked warily. Because you're an idiot who doesn't understand what he's dealing with. Draco snapped, a flash of his old fire returning. He's obsessed with it. With what it did to Bellatrix. She deserved worse, Ginny said coldly. Draco flinched. You don't understand. The dark mark, it's not just a tattoo. It's a connection. And your Patronus, it damaged that connection. Permanently. Harry exchanged glances with Hermione, whose eyes had widened in understanding. Bellatrix can't feel Voldemort through the mark anymore. It's more than that, Draco said, lowering his voice. She's weakened. Her magic, it's not responding right. The healers at St. Mungo's don't understand it, but the Dark Lord does. He thinks your Patronus somehow poisoned her magical core through the mark. That's not possible, Hermione objected. A Patronus is pure protective magic. It can't poison anyone. Tell that to Bellatrix, Draco shot back. She can barely cast a Lumos now. Harry felt cold. He hadn't meant to permanently damage Bellatrix's magic, just stop her attack. Why are you warning me about this, Malfoy? Draco's expression closed off. I'm not warning you. I'm telling you that you've made yourself the Dark Lord's top priority. Whatever weapon you think you've created, he's coming for it. And for everyone around you. With that, he turned to leave, but Harry called after him. Malfoy. Has he asked you to watch me? Report on my training? Draco froze, his back to them. After a long moment, he said quietly, among other things. Then he was gone, leaving a tense silence behind him. Well, that was cheerful, Ron finally said. Merry Christmas to us. Do you think he's telling the truth? Neville asked. About what happened to Bellatrix? Harry shrugged helplessly. I don't know. But why would he lie about that? To scare you into not using the Patronus, Ginny suggested. Or to warn you, Luna countered. Draco Malfoy is afraid. I can see the Raxperts all around him. Hermione ignored Luna's mention of imaginary creatures. If the Nundu Patronus can damage a Death Eater's connection to Voldemort and weaken their magic, that's a game changer. It's also terrifying, Harry said. I didn't create this Patronus to permanently cripple people's magic. Even Death Eaters. They wouldn't hesitate to do worse to you, Ron pointed out. That's not the point. Harry's voice rose. If I start thinking like them, using magic to cause lasting harm, how am I any different? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Outside, the Scottish countryside rolled by, snow-covered fields stretching to the horizon as the train carried them toward London, and whatever dangers awaited during the holiday. The borough was decorated with even more enthusiasm than usual, as if the Weasleys were determined to create a haven of normality amid the growing darkness. Enchanted garlands spiraled up the staircase, fairy lights danced around the kitchen, and the smells of Molly's cooking filled every corner of the house. Even the garden gnomes had been adorned with tiny Santa hats, much to their obvious dismay. Despite the festive atmosphere, the signs of war were evident in subtle ways. Arthur checked security wards each morning and evening. Bill and Fleur arrived with news of goblins withdrawing support from the ministry. And Percy's absence was a palpable void, even with the knowledge that he'd been appointed Harry's observer. On Christmas Eve, after a sumptuous dinner and several rounds of exploding snap, Harry stepped outside for a breath of air. The night was clear and cold, stars pricking the darkness above. The garden lay still beneath a fresh dusting of snow, peaceful in a way few things were these days. Bit overwhelming in there, isn't it? Harry turned to see Lupin approaching, a steaming mug in each hand. He offered one to Harry, who accepted it gratefully, the warm cider heating his frozen fingers. Just needed some space to think, Harry admitted. Lupin nodded, understanding without judgment. Your father used to do the same thing, step outside when the noise and cheer became too much. Sirius never understood it. He thrived on chaos. The mention of Sirius still hurt, but less sharply than before. I've been meaning to ask you something, Harry said. About my Patronus. Ah. Lupin sipped his cider thoughtfully. I wondered when you'd want to discuss that. Did you know it could happen? A Patronus changing so dramatically? I knew it was possible for a Patronus to change form after emotional trauma, Lupin replied. Tonks experienced something similar last year. But the extent of your change, no, that's unprecedented. Dumbledore thinks using it as a weapon might damage my soul. Lupin was quiet for a moment. The Patronus charm is one of the purest forms of magic we know. It requires genuine joy, genuine love to cast successfully. To channel that into something destructive. He sighed. I don't know, Harry. Magic often reflects intent. If your intent remains protective rather than vengeful, perhaps the risk is minimal. But what if I can't tell the difference anymore? Harry asked, voicing the fear that had haunted him since Hogsmeade. When Bellatrix was trying to kill me, I wanted to stop her, but part of me wanted her to suffer for what she did to Sirius. That makes you human, Harry. Not dark. Does it? Harry stared into his mug. Malfoy says Bellatrix's magic is permanently damaged. That the Nundu Patronus poisoned her magical core through the dark mark. Lupin looked troubled. I've heard similar reports. The Order is still investigating, but if true, it represents magic we don't fully understand. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Which is why you must be cautious, but not fearful. This ability may be a crucial tool in the fight against Voldemort. Or it might turn me into something I don't want to be. That, Lupin said firmly, is a choice you make, not a destiny forced upon you. Your Patronus reflects who you are, Harry, a protector with the capacity for righteous force when necessary. The moment you enjoy causing pain, that's when you should worry. Before Harry could respond, a silver streak shot through the garden, a weasel Patronus that spoke with Arthur's voice, attack imminent. Get inside. Protective wards activated. Lupin's wand was instantly in his hand. Back to the house, Harry. Now. They sprinted toward the kitchen door. The peaceful night erupted into chaos as multiple apparition cracks shattered the silence. Dark figures appeared at the edge of the property, firing curses that splashed against the burrow's protective wards in showers of sparks. Death Eaters! Harry shouted as they burst into the kitchen, where the Weasleys were already mobilizing with practiced efficiency. How many? Arthur demanded, his usually gentle face hardened with resolve. At least a dozen, Lupin reported. They're testing the outer wards. They won't hold for long, Bill said grimly, checking the windows. Not against a concentrated assault. Molly was already herding Ginny toward the fireplace. Everyone to Aunt Muriel's. The flue's still connected. No time, Arthur countered as the house shook with a massive impact. They've brought down the anti-apparition wards already. They must have inside information about our defenses. A chill went through the room. Inside information meant a spy, or a tortured order member. We fight, Ron said, his wand already in hand. We can hold them off until help arrives. The ministry's been alerted, Arthur assured them. Orders are on their way, but it could be minutes. Another impact rocked the house, sending dishes crashing from shelves. Outside, a voice amplified by magic called out, "Send out Potter, and the rest of you may live. The Dark Lord wants only him." Like hell, Fred growled, positioning himself by a window. Language, Molly said automatically, though she too had her wand ready, her eyes fierce. Harry's mind raced. The Death Eaters wanted him, were willing to kill the entire Weasley family to get to him. It was his fault they were in danger. But he wasn't helpless anymore. "I have an idea," he said, meeting Ron's eyes. "Remember the third formation we practiced? The containment pattern?" Ron's eyes widened, then narrowed with determination. It could work. We'd need to draw them closer, though. "What are you two talking about?" Molly demanded. Harry's Patronus, Lupin realized. "You want to use the Nundu against them. It can target dark marks specifically," Harry explained quickly. "If I can cast it from a central position, while you all shield me long enough, it could neutralize all of them at once," Bill finished, looking impressed. "Or kill them," Lupin warned. "We don't know the full extent of its effects." Another blast hit the house, this one shattering windows. Glass rained across the kitchen floor. "We're out of options," Arthur decided. "Harry, what do you need?" "Space to cast, and about 30 seconds of protection," Harry said, falling into the tactical mindset Ron had drilled into him over weeks of practice. "And we need to lure them closer, the Nundu's breath has limited range." "Leave that to us," George said, exchanging a mischievous glance with Fred that seemed out of place amid the danger. "Positions, everyone," Arthur ordered. "Bill, Fleur, take the east side. Fred, George, the west. Molly, Ron, Ginny, with me at the front. Remus, watch Harry's back." Harry moved to the center of the kitchen as the others rushed to their positions. Outside, curses continued to hammer the weakening wards. Through shattered windows, he could see dark figures drawing closer, emboldened by the deteriorating defenses. Suddenly, twin rockets screamed from the upper windows, Fred and George's handiwork. The magical fireworks exploded among the Death Eaters, causing momentary confusion. As the attackers scattered, the pyrotechnics transformed into fiery dragons that pursued them, driving them toward the house. "Now, Harry!" Ron shouted. Harry closed his eyes, focusing through the chaos. He thought of the Weasleys, the family who had taken him in, loved him without condition. He thought of Sirius, of his parents, of everyone who had sacrificed to keep him safe. Now it was his turn to protect them. Expecto Patronum. The Nundu burst forth in an explosion of silver light that momentarily outshone the fireworks outside. It materialized fully formed, larger than ever before, its spectral body radiating power. Silver eyes surveyed the scene through the shattered windows, focusing on the Death Eaters now regrouping after the fireworks assault. "Surround the house," Harry commanded. "Target only those bearing the dark mark. Incapacitate, don't kill." The Nundu growled in acknowledgement and leapt through the window in a fluid, impossible motion that carried its massive form outside. It landed silently in the snow, vapor already pouring from its mouth in thick clouds that rolled across the garden. Through his connection to the Patronus, Harry could sense the dark marks, a dozen burning signatures spread around the property. He directed the Nundu methodically, guiding it toward each cluster of attackers. The Death Eaters reacted with confusion, then terror as they realized what they faced. One fired a killing curse at the Patronus, which passed through harmlessly. Another tried to apparate away but collapsed screaming, clutching his arm where the dark mark burned beneath his sleeve. "It's working," Ron whispered, watching through a window as the Nundu stalked between attackers, its breath enveloping each in turn. Where the vapor touched, Death Eaters fell to their knees, their wands dropping from nerveless fingers. Harry maintained his focus, carefully controlling the density of the Nundu's breath. Not lethal, just enough to neutralize. He could feel the connection to each dark mark through the Patronus, could sense how the vapor disrupted the magical link to Voldemort. It wasn't destroying their magic entirely as it had with Bellatrix, but temporarily severing the connection, causing magical feedback that incapacitated them. Within minutes, the attack had collapsed. Death Eaters lay scattered across the snow, unconscious or too weakened to fight. The Nundu prowled among them, ensuring none remained active. "Merlin's beard," Arthur breathed. It worked. Multiple cracks announced the arrival of Aurors, their red robes vivid against the snow. Leading them was Kingsley Shacklebolt, who took in the scene with widened eyes before spotting Harry through the window. "Stand down, Potter," he called. "We'll take it from here." Harry nodded and dismissed the Patronus, which dissolved into wisps of silver that briefly illuminated the night before fading. The moment it vanished, exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. He staggered, catching himself against the kitchen table. "Harry!" Ginny was at his side instantly, supporting him. "Are you all right?" "Fine," he managed, though his legs felt like jelly. "Just tired." The Aurors were moving efficiently among the fallen Death Eaters, binding them with magical restraints. Kingsley entered the house, his expression grave. "That was quite a display, Harry," he said quietly. "Effective, but very public. Every magical monitoring system at the Ministry just went haywire." "They attacked us," Ron protested. "What was he supposed to do, let them kill us all?" "Of course not," Kingsley assured him. "But this complicates things. The Minister will want a full debriefing, and Umbridge is already calling for Harry to be placed in protective custody, for everyone's safety." "That's ridiculous!" Molly exclaimed, wrapping a protective arm around Harry's shoulders. "He just saved our lives." "I know that, Molly," Kingsley said patiently. "But the Ministry sees a 16-year-old wizard who just single-handedly neutralized 12 Death Eaters with magic they don't understand. That makes them nervous." "So what happens now?" Harry asked tiredly. "Now," Arthur said firmly, "you rest. The Ministry can wait until morning." Kingsley nodded. "I've arranged a safe house. You'll all need to relocate immediately, the burrow's location is clearly compromised." As the others gathered emergency supplies, Harry stood at the window, watching Aurors processing the scene outside. The pristine snow was trampled and scorched, the peaceful garden transformed into a battlefield because of his presence. Yet for the first time, he hadn't been helpless. He protected the people he loved instead of being protected by them. Was that worth the price his soul might be paying? He still didn't know. A flash of movement caught his eye, a silver weasel Patronus racing away from the house, heading south. Percy's report to the Ministry, no doubt. Harry wondered what it said. Was he described as a hero, a weapon, or a dangerous anomaly to be contained? Perhaps he was all three. The Ministry's response came swiftly. By the next morning, the Daily Prophet's headline screamed, "Boy who lived repels Death Eater attack. Ministry classifies Potter as magical being of interest." The article detailed the attack on the burrow and Harry's unprecedented defensive response that had incapacitated 12 of Voldemort's followers without a single spell cast directly by Harry himself. Minister Scrimgeour was quoted praising Harry's courage and quick thinking, while simultaneously announcing new protocols for monitoring and supporting individuals with exceptional magical capabilities. The classification as a magical being of interest was new, a step beyond the Type 3 anomaly designation, created specifically for Harry's case. According to the article, it required Harry to report any use of his Patronus to the Ministry and to submit to regular magical assessment interviews. They're treating you like a sentient magical creature rather than a wizard, Hermione said, disgusted, when she arrived at the safe house later that day. It was a small cottage on the coast, hidden under a Fidelius charm with Bill as secret keeper. At least they're admitting Voldemort's back, Ron pointed out, passing Harry a cup of tea. And they caught actual Death Eaters this time instead of random suspects. Harry stared out the window at the grey sea beyond. Any news on their condition? Hermione hesitated. According to Dad, they're all alive but changed. Their dark marks are damaged, like Bellatrix's, but not as severely. The healers say their magic is weakened but not gone completely. And Voldemort? Any reaction? Nothing public, Hermione replied. But Percy overheard Scrimgeour talking. Apparently there's been a flurry of unusual magical activity detected in places associated with Death Eater families. They think Voldemort is punishing followers who failed him. Harry's scar prickled at this, a phantom echo of the rage he knew Voldemort must be feeling. 12 followers captured, their connection to him damaged, all because of Harry's new power. The retaliation would be severe. Of that, he had no doubt. There's something else, Hermione said, pulling a book from her bag. It was ancient, bound in faded leather with no title on the spine. I found this in the Black family library when I went back to Grimmauld Place for some of my things. It mentions something called the Hunter's Moon phenomenon. The what? Ron asked, peering at the book skeptically. It's a rare magical occurrence, Hermione explained, opening to a marked page. When a wizard or witch develops a protective ability that evolves into an offensive capability during times of great darkness. The book only mentions a few historical cases, but they all share similarities with Harry's Patronus. Harry moved closer, examining the faded text and illustrations. One showed a witch whose shield charm had apparently evolved to reflect curses back at attackers with amplified force. Another described a wizard whose healing spells could selectively target dark magic within a person, burning it away. According to this, Hermione continued, these abilities typically manifest under a hunter's moon, the full moon of October, which is when the veil between defensive and offensive magic is thinnest. And look at the date of the DA session when your Patronus first changed, October 9th, Harry recalled. There was a full moon that night. I remember seeing it through the windows of the Room of Requirement. The Hunter's Moon of 1996, Hermione confirmed. The book says these abilities are temporary, lasting only until the specific darkness they're meant to combat is defeated. So once Voldemort's gone, the Nundu might change back to my stag? Harry asked, feeling a strange mix of relief and loss at the thought. Possibly. But there's a warning too. Hermione pointed to a paragraph near the bottom of the page. Using the evolved ability extensively can make the change permanent, altering the caster's magical signature forever. Is that bad? Ron asked. It doesn't say it's bad, exactly, Hermione hedged. Just, transformative. The witch with the reflective shield eventually couldn't cast a normal shield charm at all, every defensive spell she used became automatically offensive. Harry thought about this. The Patronus was one of the few connections he had to his father, the stag representing prongs, his father's animagus form. Losing that connection permanently felt like losing another piece of his parents. Yet the Nundu had saved lives. It had given him a way to fight back against Death Eaters without killing them, to protect people he loved without relying on others to protect him. I need to understand it better, he decided. How to control it precisely, how to limit the damage to exactly what's necessary. And then what? Ron asked. Harry looked at his friends, determination settling over him. Then we take the fight to Voldemort. On our terms, not his. Outside, the winter sun broke briefly through the clouds, casting golden light across the turbulent sea. In that moment, Harry knew the path ahead would be neither simple nor painless. But for the first time since Sirius died, he didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. The Nundu was his, a reflection of his own magic, his own protective instinct evolved into something powerful enough to change the course of the war. Now he just had to ensure it didn't change him beyond recognition in the process. Chapter 3, 1,000 Breaths. The new year brought no respite. January howled in with bitter storms that matched the darkening mood of the wizarding world. Death Eater attacks escalated, each more brutal than the last. The Prophet reported disappearances daily, shopkeepers from Diagon Alley, ministry officials, families of Muggleborns. Voldemort's message was clear, no one was safe. Harry stood at the entrance to the room of requirement, listening to the muffled voices inside. The DA had continued meeting in his absence, led by Neville and Ginny, while he, Ron, and Hermione completed their extended Christmas holiday at the Order's safe house. Now, 3 weeks into January, they'd finally been allowed to return to Hogwarts, with enhanced security measures that made Harry feel more prisoner than student. "Ready?" Ron asked beside him. Harry nodded, pushing open the door. Inside, 24 students practiced shield charms in pairs, their faces grim with determination. The room fell silent as they entered, all eyes turning to Harry. "Blimey," Seamus said finally. "The Ministry's secret weapon returns." Nervous laughter broke the tension. Neville stepped forward, offering his hand to Harry. "Welcome back. We've been practicing like mad." "I can see that," Harry said, genuinely impressed by the intensity of their drills. "Looks like you didn't need me after all." "Don't be stupid," Ginny said, pushing through the crowd. "Of course we need you. Now more than ever." The conviction in her voice warmed something in Harry's chest that had been cold for weeks. Since the Burrow attack, he'd felt increasingly isolated, monitored constantly by the Ministry, handled carefully by the Order, watched warily by his fellow students. Even Ron and Hermione sometimes looked at him differently after seeing the Nundu's power firsthand. "So," Dean Thomas called out, "are you going to show us this famous Patronus or what? The one that's got you-know-whose knickers in a twist?" More nervous laughter, but Harry could see the genuine interest in their faces. Fear too, but mostly curiosity and hope. "I don't think," Hermione began cautiously. "It's okay," Harry interrupted. "They should see it. They should know exactly what we're dealing with." He moved to the center of the room, drawing his wand. "Just, don't panic, all right?" He closed his eyes, focusing on the now familiar sensation. The Nundu Patronus came more easily each time, as if eager to materialize. Expecto Patronum. Silver light erupted from his wand, coalescing into the massive feline form. The Nundu stood beside Harry, its spectral head level with his shoulder, silver mist curling from its mouth. It surveyed the room with intelligent eyes, its ethereal mane rippling with power. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several students stepped back instinctively, while others leaned forward in fascination. "It's enormous," Padma Patil whispered. "Can it really kill Death Eaters?" Colin Creevy asked, his camera for once forgotten in his hands. "It doesn't kill them," Harry corrected. "It disrupts the dark mark, severs their connection to Voldemort temporarily and weakens their magic." "But it killed those Dementors at Hogsmeade," Seamus pointed out. "That's different. Dementors aren't human." Harry gestured to the Nundu, which padded silently around the perimeter of the room, inspecting the students curiously. "It can sense dark magic, track it. And yes, it can destroy Dementors completely." "What does it feel like?" Neville asked. "When you cast it?" Harry considered this. "Powerful," he admitted. Like having a guardian that's an extension of myself. It knows what I want it to do, sometimes before I do." "Wicked," Ron murmured, still impressed despite having seen the Patronus multiple times now. "But it's dangerous," Harry continued, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "The Ministry's watching my every move because of it. And Voldemort." He hesitated. "Let's just say he's very interested in stopping it, or controlling it. That's why we need to be ready," Hermione added. "If Voldemort's targeting Harry specifically because of this Patronus, he might target all of you too, as Harry's friends and allies." We know the risks, Ginny said firmly. We're still here, aren't we? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Harry felt a surge of gratitude so intense it made his throat tight. These people, his friends, his classmates, were willing to stand with him despite the danger. Right then, he said, regaining his composure. Let's get to work. The Nundu might help, but we all need to be ready to fight. As the session progressed, Harry noticed the students gradually relaxing around the Patronus. By the end of the hour, some were even practicing near it, apparently drawing comfort from its protective presence. The Nundu itself seemed to respond positively, its vapor breath thinning to a barely visible mist as it observed the training. Only when the door opened unexpectedly did the Patronus react aggressively, spinning toward the entrance with a rumbling growl that stopped everyone in their tracks. Draco Malfoy stood frozen in the doorway, his pale face even whiter as the Nundu fixed its silver eyes on him. Malfoy! Ron exclaimed, raising his wand. How did you, Potter? Draco interrupted, his voice strained, eyes never leaving the advancing Patronus. Call it off. Please. Harry frowned, studying Malfoy closely. The Slytherin looked terrible, worse than on the train. His left arm was held stiffly at his side, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. Stand down, Harry told the Nundu, which halted but continued watching Malfoy intently. What do you want, Draco? The use of his first name seemed to surprise Malfoy as much as everyone else. He swallowed visibly, then said, I need to talk to you. Alone. Not a chance, Ron snapped. Whatever you have to say, it's about the Dark Lord's plans, Draco cut in. And about your Patronus. He knows what it can do now. He's changing tactics. The room went silent. Harry exchanged glances with Hermione, who looked torn between suspicion and curiosity. How do we know this isn't a trap? Ginny demanded. Draco laughed hollowly. Because I wouldn't be stupid enough to walk in here alone if it was. He pushed up his left sleeve suddenly, revealing the dark mark, but not as Harry had seen it before. The snake and skull were discolored, parts of the design seeming to wriggle independently on his skin, as if trying to escape. The Nundu growled again, its vapor thickening as it stared at the mark. It's aware of me, Draco said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ever since the Burrow attack. The Dark Lord can feel it when your Patronus is nearby. It's like it burns through the mark, directly into him. Harry narrowed his eyes. You were at the Burrow? You were one of the attackers? No. Draco looked genuinely horrified. I wasn't, I would never. He stopped, visibly collecting himself. I wasn't there. But I've seen what happened to those who were. What your Patronus did to them. They deserved worse, Seamus muttered. Maybe, Draco conceded, surprising everyone. But you don't understand what's happening now. The Dark Lord is obsessed with your Patronus, Potter. He's conducting experiments on his own followers, trying to understand how it affects the mark. People are dying. Why should we care what happens to Death Eaters? Dean asked coldly. Because not everyone who bears the mark chose it freely, Draco replied, his eyes darting to his own forearm. And because he's developing a counterspell, something that would turn the Nundu's power back on Potter. Something lethal. Harry felt cold despite the warm room. How do you know this? Because I'm supposed to help test it, Draco said, looking directly at Harry now. On you. The silence that followed was deafening. Harry could sense the DA members tensing around him, wands gripped tighter, positions shifting subtly to defensive stances. Let me get this straight, Ron said finally. You came here to warn Harry that you know who is planning to use you to test some counterspell against his Patronus? Essentially, yes, Draco replied. Why? Hermione asked, her analytical mind already working through possibilities. Why betray Voldemort now? Draco flinched at the name. Because I've seen what he does to people who fail him. Because my mother is being held hostage against my cooperation. Because, he looked at his mark again, because I made a mistake, and I don't want to die for it. It was perhaps the most honest thing Harry had ever heard from Malfoy's lips. The fear in his voice was raw, unfiltered by his usual sneer or bravado. What exactly is Voldemort planning? Harry asked, ignoring the collective wince at the name. Draco glanced nervously at the Nundu, which hadn't moved from its position but continued watching him intently, silver vapor curling from its mouth. He's developing a spell that inverts magical signatures, he explained. It would turn your Patronus power against you, make it target your magical core instead of Death Eaters. That's extremely advanced magic, Hermione said skeptically. Even Voldemort would struggle to invert something as fundamentally positive as a Patronus. He has help, Draco replied grimly. From specialists in soul magic. And he has subjects to experiment on. The disappearances, Harry realized. They're not just random terror attacks. He's taking people to test this spell. Draco nodded. Mostly those with strong light magic signatures. People known for powerful patron uses or healing abilities. Like who? Neville demanded. The wand maker Ollivander. A healer from St. Mungo's specialized in curse damage. A few Aurors. Draco swallowed. And they're planning to take others soon. People closer to you, Potter. To study how your magic responds to emotional triggers. My family, Ron whispered, his freckles standing out against suddenly pale skin. Not yet, Draco assured him. But they're on the list. Along with Granger's parents and... He glanced at Ginny, then away quickly. Harry felt rage building, hot and fierce. The Nundu responded instantly, its form growing larger, vapor pouring more thickly from its mouth. Draco stepped back in alarm as the mist began to flow toward him. Harry, Hermione said sharply. Control it. With effort, Harry reined in his anger, and the Nundu's vapor receded. When? He demanded. When are these attacks planned? Soon. Within the week. They're moving faster since the Burrow failure. Draco looked desperate now. You have to understand, if I don't help them, they'll kill my mother. But if I do, they'll use you to kill Harry, Ginny finished coldly. Or worse, Draco agreed. The spell might not kill instantly. It could corrupt your magic permanently. Turn you into something else. Harry exchanged looks with Ron and Hermione, a silent communication born of years of friendship. Whatever Draco's motives, they couldn't ignore this warning. What do you want from us? Harry asked finally. Protection, Draco said immediately. For my mother and myself. In exchange for information, everything I know about the Dark Lord's plans, the locations of safe houses, names of unmarked supporters. It was a substantial offer, one that could significantly aid the Order. But Harry sensed there was more. And, he prompted. Draco hesitated, then squared his shoulders. And help removing this. He gestured to his dark mark. If your Patronus can damage the connection, maybe it can sever it completely. A murmur ran through the DA members. What Draco was asking was unprecedented, and potentially dangerous. No one had voluntarily subjected themselves to the Nundu's power. It could permanently damage your magic, Hermione warned. Like it did to Bellatrix. I know the risks, Draco replied. But I'd rather lose my magic than my soul. And that's what serving him costs, in the end. The raw honesty of this statement silenced everyone. Harry studied Malfoy, searching for any sign of deception. The Nundu did the same, its silver eyes seeming to look through Draco rather than at him. I need to discuss this with the Order, Harry said finally. This isn't just about me. There's no time, Draco insisted. The first attacks are planned for tomorrow night. Granger's parents are already protected, Hermione interrupted. They've been moved to a safe location since Christmas. Others haven't been, Draco countered. The Lovegoods, the Thomases, Professor Lupin, Remus. Harry's attention sharpened. They're targeting Remus specifically? Draco nodded. Because of his connection to you. And because they need a werewolf for another experiment, something about combining curse magic with the Patronus inversion. Harry felt sick. The depths of Voldemort's depravity seemed limitless. We need to warn them all, Neville said urgently. Get everyone to safety. And then what? Luna asked, her dreamy voice suddenly practical. We can't hide forever. Eventually, you know who will find a way to counter Harry's Patronus. We need to stop him before that happens. She was right, Harry realized. This was no longer a defensive war, not since his Patronus had evolved into something that could actively harm Voldemort and his followers. They needed to seize this temporary advantage before it disappeared. We go on the offensive, he said, the decision crystallizing in his mind. Use the Nundu to track Death Eaters through their marks, find Voldemort's hideouts. That's suicide, Draco said bluntly. The Dark Lord is expecting you to try something like that. Not if we have inside information, Harry countered, looking pointedly at Draco. Not if we know exactly where to strike and when. Malfoy paled further, if that was possible. You want me to be your spy? I want you to help us end this, Harry corrected. Before more people die. Before your mother becomes another casualty of Voldemort's obsessions. The room went quiet as Draco visibly wrestled with the choice before him. Finally, he gave a short, sharp nod. I'll tell you everything I know. But you have to promise to protect my mother. And to try to remove my mark. I promise to try, Harry said carefully. I can't guarantee it will work. That's more than I deserve, Draco admitted quietly. Harry dismissed the DA with instructions to meet again the next day. As the students filed out, casting curious glances back at Draco, Harry turned to Ron and Hermione. We need to contact the Order immediately. And I need to speak with Dumbledore. What if it's a trap? Ron asked in an undertone, eyeing Malfoy suspiciously. Then we'll be ready, Harry replied. But I don't think it is. The Nundu would have reacted differently if he was lying. How can you tell? Hermione asked, fascinated despite her concerns. Harry shrugged. I just can. It's like, it can sense intentions through the mark. And Malfoy's intentions aren't evil. Desperate, yes. Afraid, definitely. But not evil. Hermione looked thoughtful. That's extraordinarily complex magic for a Patronus. I need to research this further. She turned to Draco. I'll need you to describe exactly how the mark feels when the Nundu is near. Every detail. Malfoy looked surprised at being addressed directly. It burns. Not like when he summons us, that's a different pain. This is deeper, like it's burning from the inside out. And it feels like something is being pulled out through it, like a connection being strained. Fascinating, Hermione murmured, already mentally compiling research questions. We should move this conversation somewhere more secure, Harry decided, dismissing the Nundu with a wave of his wand. And we need to contact everyone on Voldemort's target list immediately. As they left the room of requirement, Harry felt a strange sense of clarity. For months, he'd been reacting to events, training defensively, waiting for Voldemort's next move. Now, finally, they had a chance to act first, to use the Nundu's power proactively rather than reactively. It was terrifying. It was necessary. And it felt, for the first time in ages, like hope. Dumbledore's office was crowded. Order members stood in tense groups, processing the information Draco had provided over the past hour. McGonagall and Snape flanked the headmaster's desk, their expressions grave. Kingsley Shacklebolt and Tonks, recently released from St. Mungo's, her hair a subdued brown rather than her usual vibrant colors, represented the Aurors. Lupin and Moody stood near the door, both looking battle-ready. And you're certain about these locations? Moody growled, his magical eye fixed unblinkingly on Draco. As certain as I can be, Draco replied, maintaining remarkable composure despite being surrounded by people who had every reason to distrust him. The Dark Lord changes headquarters frequently, but the Malfoy Hunting Lodge in Scotland has been in continuous use for prisoner containment. It's where they're keeping Ollivander and the others. Why should we believe anything you say? Moody pressed. You bear his mark willingly. Not as willingly as you might think, Draco said quietly. But believe what you want. The information is accurate. I believe Mr. Malfoy is telling the truth, Dumbledore said, his blue eyes grave but clear. And more importantly, I believe we must act on this intelligence quickly. I agree, Kingsley's deep voice added weight to the statement. If Voldemort is indeed developing a counter to Harry's Patronus, we have a narrow window of opportunity. But a direct assault would be foolhardy, Snape interjected, his dark eyes moving from Draco to Harry. The Dark Lord will be expecting Potter to react rashly to this information. It would play directly into his hands. What do you suggest then, Severus? McGonagall asked. That we do nothing while he perfects a weapon against Potter. I suggest, Snape said silkily, that we use the boy's Patronus for its tracking abilities rather than its offensive capabilities. Locate the prisoners, extract them precisely, and retreat without confrontation. A rescue mission, not an attack, Lupin nodded. That makes sense tactically. And then what? Harry couldn't contain himself any longer. We keep playing defense while Voldemort picks us off one by one. While he develops new weapons against us. This might be our only chance to strike directly. Harry, Dumbledore's voice was gentle but firm. I understand your frustration. But we must proceed with caution. Voldemort has had months to study the effects of your Patronus. He will be prepared for you to use it against him. No, he won't, Hermione spoke up suddenly, drawing all eyes to her. Not if we modify how the Patronus works. Explain, Miss Granger, McGonagall prompted. Hermione straightened, her expression determined. The Nundu Patronus currently targets dark marks indiscriminately. But what if we could refine it, make it selectively target only certain kinds of dark marks? Such as? Snape asked, his interest clearly piqued despite his skepticism. Such as those belonging to willing Death Eaters versus those coerced, Hermione explained. The mark itself might be identical, but the magical signature of acceptance would differ. If we could attune Harry's Patronus to sense that difference, it could neutralize true Death Eaters while leaving the coerced unharmed, Lupin finished, looking impressed. Theoretically possible, but the magical calibration would be extraordinarily complex. I've been researching it, Hermione continued eagerly. There's precedent in certain ancient protection charms that could distinguish between enemies with harmful intent versus those who were merely present. Like my mother's protection, Harry realized. It didn't just shield me from Voldemort, it actively harmed him when he tried to touch me. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened with interest. You may be onto something profound, Miss Granger. The sacrificial protection Lily Potter invoked is indeed similar in structure to what you're proposing. It responds to intent as much as action. So it could work? Harry asked, hope rising. Perhaps, Dumbledore conceded. With proper preparation and understanding of the underlying magical principles. But it would require something more than standard spell work. It would require blood magic, Snape finished, his voice unusually soft. Potter's blood, carrying his mother's protection, combined with an intention-discerning charm. The room went silent. Blood magic existed in a gray area, not quite dark, but certainly not taught at Hogwarts. Would it be dangerous? Harry asked finally. All-powerful magic carries risks, Dumbledore replied. But in this case, I believe the risk is justified. If we can modify your Patronus to target only those who have willingly embraced Voldemort's cause. It could end the war in a single stroke, Kingsley said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Or it could backfire catastrophically, Moody countered. Blood magic is unpredictable at best. We need more time to research, Hermione insisted. To make sure we get it right. Time is precisely what we lack, Miss Granger, McGonagall reminded her. If Mr. Malfoy's information is correct, Voldemort plans to begin his attacks tomorrow night. Harry looked at Draco, who had been silent during this exchange. You said Voldemort's keeping prisoners at the hunting lodge. Including Ollivander? Draco nodded. And others. They're being used for the experiments on the counterspell. Then we rescue them first, Harry decided. Use the Nundu to track the location precisely, get them out. And while we're doing that, Hermione can continue her research on modifying the Patronus. A two-pronged approach, Lupin nodded approvingly. Rescue the prisoners while developing a more targeted weapon for later use. It's still incredibly dangerous, Tonks pointed out, speaking for the first time. If you know who is expecting you, Harry, he's expecting me to charge in recklessly, Harry acknowledged. So we'll be strategic instead. Small team, precise objective, in and out before they know what hit them. And who exactly would comprise this small team? Snape asked sardonically. Myself, for the Patronus, Harry began. Lupin and Tonks as trained aurors. Ron for tactical planning, he ignored Snape's derisive snort, and Malfoy as our guide. Absolutely not, several voices objected at once. Mr. Potter, McGonagall said, clearly struggling to remain calm, you are suggesting that 3 students, one of whom bears the dark mark, accompany 2 Order members on a mission to infiltrate a Death Eater stronghold. Yes, Harry said simply. Because it's the only way it works. The Nundu responds best to me, Ron has spent months analyzing its tactical applications, and Malfoy knows the location intimately. Without all 3 of us, the mission fails before it begins. He's right, Moody said unexpectedly. Much as I hate to admit it, the boys' plan has merit. Small teams are harder to detect than large forces. And Potter's Patronus gives them a significant advantage. And what of Miss Granger? Dumbledore asked. You mentioned her continuing research. I'll stay behind, Hermione said immediately. I need access to the library's restricted section anyway. And someone needs to coordinate the protection of the other targets on Voldemort's list. Dumbledore studied them all for a long moment, his aged face showing the weight of the decisions before him. Very well, he said finally. The rescue team will proceed as Harry suggested. Minerva, Severus, and I will assist Miss Granger with her research on modifying the Patronus charm. Alastair and Kingsley will coordinate security for the individuals on Voldemort's target list. He turned to Harry, his blue eyes serious. However, I must insist on 2 conditions. First, that you maintain constant magical communication with headquarters through enchanted mirrors. Second, that you retreat immediately if you encounter resistance beyond your capabilities. Agreed, Harry said quickly, before Dumbledore could change his mind. And Mr. Malfoy, Dumbledore continued, turning to Draco, you understand that if this is indeed a trap, you will share whatever fate befalls the team. I understand, Draco replied, meeting the headmaster's gaze steadily. But it's not a trap. Not from me, at least. What about my mother, he added, a hint of his old demanding tone creeping in. Potter promised protection for her. Already arranged, Dumbledore assured him. Kingsley's team extracted her from Malfoy Manor an hour ago, while we were meeting. She is currently at a secure Order safe house. Draco's face showed shock, then relief so profound it seemed to physically transform him. She's safe. Truly. Truly, Dumbledore confirmed. One should never underestimate the speed with which the Order can act when properly motivated. The meeting continued with tactical details, timing, extraction routes, emergency protocols. Through it all, Harry felt a strange calm. For months, he'd been struggling with the Nundu Patronus, what it meant, how to control it, whether using it made him more like Voldemort. Now, finally, It felt like the power had a clear purpose, to save innocent lives and to target only those truly deserving of its effects. As the meeting concluded and the Order members dispersed to their assignments, Dumbledore held Harry back with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "A moment, Harry." When they were alone, save for Ron and Hermione who waited by the door, Dumbledore's expression grew grave. "What you are attempting is extraordinarily dangerous, not just physically but spiritually. Using any power, even one born of protection, to cause harm carries consequences for the wielder." "I know, sir," Harry said quietly. "But I don't see another choice." "There are always choices," Dumbledore replied. "I merely ask that you remember why your Patronus changed in the first place, not from a desire to punish, but from a need to protect those you love. Hold to that distinction, Harry. It may prove crucial in the days ahead." Harry nodded, understanding the warning. The line between justice and vengeance, between protection and punishment, had always been thin for him. Now, with the Nundu's lethal potential at his command, it was thinner than ever. "I'll remember," he promised. Whether he could maintain that distinction in the heat of battle remained to be seen. The Scottish Highlands stretched dark and forbidding beneath a clouded moon. Snow blanketed the rolling landscape, pristine save for the tracks of their approach, tracks that Tonks carefully obscured with a wave of her wand as they advanced. 5 figures moved silently through the night, Harry and Ron under the invisibility cloak, Tonks and Lupin disillusioned, and Malfoy, visible but wearing dark clothing instead of his usual ostentatious garb. "There," Draco whispered, pointing to a rise ahead. "Just beyond that ridge. The lodge is warded extensively, but I know the safe approach." "How many guards?" Lupin asked softly. 2 at the perimeter. 4 inside. Plus whatever prisoners they're keeping." Draco's breath fogged in the cold air. "The wards will recognize me, but they'll also alert the guards that I've returned. We'll have seconds, not minutes." "That's where the Nundu comes in," Ron murmured from beneath the cloak. "Harry casts it the moment we're through the wards. It neutralizes the guards while we free the prisoners." It was a simple plan. Too simple, perhaps, but sometimes the straightforward approach was best. Especially when they had a weapon the enemy wasn't expecting. "Remember," Tonks cautioned, her voice serious despite her youthful appearance, "non-lethal force only. We want prisoners for interrogation, not martyrs for their cause." Harry nodded, though no one could see him beneath the cloak. The Nundu's power was difficult to modulate precisely, something Hermione was working to fix, but he practiced extensively over the past day, learning to control the density of the vapor to incapacitate without permanently damaging. They approached the ridge cautiously, using counter-detection charms at regular intervals. According to Draco, the hunting lodge had belonged to the Malfoy family for generations, used primarily for entertaining political connections away from public scrutiny. Its isolation made it perfect for Voldemort's darker purposes. "Wait," Draco hissed suddenly, dropping to a crouch. The others froze. "Movement at the perimeter." "That's not right, there should be fixed guard positions, not patrols." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. "They've changed the security protocols." "Possibly," Draco admitted, his face tense. "Or it's a trap," Ron finished grimly. They retreated to the shelter of a stand of pine trees, momentarily safe from detection. Lupin pulled out the enchanted mirror that connected them to Order headquarters. "Moody," he whispered to the glass. "Security is enhanced beyond Malfoy's intelligence. Requesting guidance." Moody's grizzled face appeared in the mirror. "Abort if you're compromised. Otherwise proceed with extreme caution. We've received confirmation that Ollivander is indeed being held there. His magical signature was detected briefly when the wards fluctuated an hour ago." "So the intelligence is accurate," Tonks mused. "Just outdated on security details. Or deliberately misleading," Lupin countered, glancing at Draco. Malfoy looked genuinely distressed. "I swear I'm telling the truth." But the Dark Lord doesn't share all details with everyone. The security could have been enhanced after I left. Only one way to find out, Harry said, making his decision. I'll send the Nundu ahead as a scout. It can assess the situation without exposing us. Can you maintain it at that distance? Tonks asked dubiously. I think so, Harry replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. The connection to the Patronus weakened with distance, but he'd never tested its maximum range. Slipping out from under the cloak, Harry positioned himself behind the largest tree trunk. Concentrating, he conjured the familiar silver light. Expecto Patronum. The Nundu materialized silently, its massive form ghostly in the moonlight. It gazed at Harry expectantly, awaiting instructions. Scout ahead, Harry whispered. Find the prisoners. Don't engage unless attacked. With a silent bound, the Nundu raced toward the ridge, its spectral form blending with the snow. Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the connection between them. Through the Patronus, he could sense its surroundings, a strange, dreamlike perception of shapes and energies rather than clear images. It's reached the first ward boundary, he murmured to the others. I can feel the magic, it's dark, layered. Multiple alarm triggers. Can the Nundu pass through? Ron asked. Harry frowned in concentration. I think so. Patronuses aren't affected by most wards. The Nundu slipped through the magical barrier like a ghost through a wall. Immediately, Harry sensed dark signatures nearby, 2 guards, just as Draco had predicted. But there was something odd about them. The guards aren't human, he said suddenly. They're. I don't know what they are. Constructs of some kind. Animated by dark magic. Inferi. Lupin suggested grimly. No, something different. More, present. Aware. Harry struggled to interpret what the Nundu was sensing. Whatever they are, they've detected the Patronus. They're moving to intercept. Through their connection, Harry felt the Nundu's protective instincts surge. Silver vapor poured from its mouth as it confronted the strange guards. When the mist touched them, they emitted silent screams that Harry felt rather than heard, a magical discharge of pain and dissolution. The vapor affects them, he reported. Strongly. They're dissolving, I think. What about the lodge itself? Tonks pressed. Can you see inside? Harry directed the Nundu forward. The hunting lodge loomed ahead, a stone structure with narrow windows and a steep, snow-covered roof. The Patronus circled it, sensing for openings or weaknesses. There are people inside, Harry said, his voice tightening. Prisoners in the basement level. Their magical signatures are weak but present. And, he paused, concentrating harder, there's something else. Something powerful being contained there. Not human. How many Death Eaters? Ron asked, already recalibrating their approach. Harry shook his head. That's the strange part. I don't sense any active dark marks inside. Just the prisoners and that other thing. Draco looked perplexed. That's not possible. There should be at least 4 guards inside at all times. Unless they've been replaced by whatever those constructs were, Lupin reasoned. Voldemort might be experimenting with different types of guardians, ones that wouldn't be affected by Harry's Patronus targeting dark marks. Or it's an elaborate trap, Moody's voice came from the mirror. A facility cleared of Death Eaters but containing something powerful that coincidentally can't be identified. Textbook ambush setup. Harry weighed the possibilities. The absence of Death Eaters was suspicious, but the prisoners were definitely real, he could sense their suffering through the Nundu's perception. We have to try, he decided. The prisoners won't survive if we leave them. Agreed, Lupin said after a moment's consideration. But we modify the approach. Harry and I will enter first with the Patronus as cover. Ron, Tonks, and Draco follow only after we've secured the ground floor. Constant communication through the mirrors. With the new plan established, they moved toward the lodge. The Nundu had cleared the outer defenses, leaving only the main ward boundary to cross. Draco approached it first, pressing his palm against what appeared to be empty air. A shimmer passed through the invisible barrier. "It still recognizes me," he confirmed. "We can pass through here." One by one, they slipped through the gap Draco had created in the wards. Harry felt the magic washing over him, ancient, complex protections tied to Malfoy bloodlines and layered with newer, darker enchantments. Once inside the perimeter, Harry directed the Nundu to lead the way toward the lodge entrance. The massive Patronus padded silently across the snow, vapor trailing from its mouth, alert for any further guards. They reached the heavy wooden door without incident. Too easily, Harry thought, his anxiety growing. Draco placed his hand on the iron handle, whispering an unlocking charm specific to Malfoy properties. The door swung open silently. The interior was dark, illuminated only by dying embers in a stone fireplace. Heavy furniture cast long shadows across an ornate rug. The air smelled of dust and something else, something metallic and unpleasant. "Blood magic," Lupin whispered, his werewolf senses more acute than the others. "Recent, too." The Nundu entered first, silver light spilling from its form and illuminating the room more clearly. Harry followed, wand ready, with Lupin close behind. They moved cautiously through the main hall, checking corners and doorways. "Basement access?" Lupin asked softly. "Through the kitchen," Draco replied from the doorway, where he waited with Ron and Tonks. "Hidden trapdoor under the pantry rug." Harry gestured for the Nundu to investigate. The Patronus padded toward a side door, which presumably led to the kitchen. As it approached, Harry felt a sudden, powerful magical signature flare to life. "Wait," he began, but too late. The floor beneath the Nundu erupted in black flames that shot upward, momentarily engulfing the Patronus in darkness. Though the flames couldn't harm the Patronus directly, they seemed to interfere with its form, causing the silver light to flicker and distort. "It's a trap!" Tonks shouted, dropping her disillusionment and raising her wand. From all sides, figures emerged from the shadows, not Death Eaters, but the same strange constructs the Nundu had encountered outside. Up close, Harry could see they were vaguely humanoid but composed of swirling dark energy barely contained within physical forms. Each bore a crude approximation of a face with glowing red eyes. Homunculi, Lupin identified them, already casting shield charms. Artificial servants created through blood magic. Nearly mindless but deadly. The creatures converged on them, moving with unnatural speed. Harry tried to direct the Nundu to attack, but the Patronus was still struggling against the black flames, its form destabilizing. "Reducto!" Ron shouted, blasting one homunculus backward. It shattered against the wall, dark energy dissipating, only to reform seconds later. "Physical attacks won't work." Tonks called, switching tactics. "Try light-based spells." Lumos Maxima. Harry cast, producing a blinding flash that caused the nearest constructs to shriek and recoil. It bought them seconds, not minutes. "The basement," Draco insisted, firing spells to clear a path toward the kitchen. "If there are prisoners, we need to get them out now." Harry knew he was right. Whatever was happening, they couldn't abandon the captives. "Lupin, Tonks, hold them off." "Ron, Draco, with me." They fought their way to the kitchen, a barrage of spells keeping the homunculi at bay temporarily. The Nundu had finally escaped the black flames, though its form looked weaker, less substantial. Harry directed it to join them, drawing strength from its presence despite its compromised state. In the kitchen, Draco yanked back a worn rug to reveal a trapdoor. "It's warded," he warned, examining the magical seals. "But I should be able to." A blast of energy from behind sent them all diving for cover. One of the homunculi had broken through Lupin and Tonks's defense. It hovered in the doorway, its form pulsing with malevolent power. "Cover me!" Draco shouted, working frantically on the trapdoor wards. Ron and Harry positioned themselves between Draco and the creature, casting every light-based spell they knew. The homunculus advanced relentlessly, absorbing or deflecting their magic. "Harry, the Nundu!" Ron yelled. "Its breath!" "Of course." Harry directed the Patronus forward, commanding it to use its vapor directly on the construct. The Nundu complied, exhaling a concentrated stream of silver mist toward the homunculus. Where the vapor touched, the dark energy comprising the creature began to dissipate, like smoke in a strong wind. The construct shuddered, its form destabilizing rapidly. With a final, silent scream, it dissolved completely. "It worked!" Harry exclaimed. "The vapor destroys them." "I've got it!" Draco announced simultaneously, the trapdoor swinging open to reveal stone steps descending into darkness. "Hurry!" Harry sent the Nundu ahead down the stairs, following closely with Ron while Draco guarded their rear. The basement was cold and damp, lit only by the Patronus's silver glow. The stone walls were inscribed with runes Harry didn't recognize, but which made his skin crawl just looking at them. "Protection cells are this way," Draco whispered, leading them down a narrow corridor. They found the prisoners in a series of small, runed cells. Ollivander was in the first. The wandmaker looked decades older than when Harry had last seen him, his silver eyes dimmed with suffering. In the other cells were the St. Mungo's healer Draco had mentioned, two people Harry didn't recognize, and most surprisingly, Luna's father, Xenophilius Lovegood. "Mr. Lovegood?" Harry exclaimed. "When were you taken?" "3 days ago," the man replied, his normally eccentric demeanor replaced by haunted awareness. "They wanted information about you, Harry Potter. About your Patronus." "We need to move quickly," Ron urged. "Can everyone walk?" Most could, though Ollivander needed support. As Draco worked on unlocking the cells, Harry directed the Nundu to scout ahead for more homunculi. Through their connection, he sensed the path was momentarily clear. Lupin and Tonks must be keeping the constructs occupied upstairs. "What about the other magical signature?" Harry asked, remembering the powerful presence he'd sensed earlier. "There was something else being held here." "The experiment," Ollivander said weakly. "In the ritual chamber. They've been working day and night, terrible magic. We need to destroy it," Draco said unexpectedly. "Whatever it is, if the Dark Lord wants it badly enough to set this trap, we can't let him have it." Harry hesitated. Their mission was rescue, not sabotage. But Draco's logic was sound. "Where's the ritual chamber?" he asked. "End of the corridor," Xenophilius answered. "But be warned, what they've created there is an abomination. A perversion of natural magic." "Get the prisoners out," Harry told Ron. "I'll check the ritual chamber with the Nundu. 2 minutes, then I'll join you." "Harry, no," Ron began. "We can't leave without knowing what we're dealing with," Harry insisted. 2 minutes. That's all." Reluctantly, Ron nodded, taking charge of evacuating the prisoners while Draco finished unlocking the remaining cells. Harry directed the Nundu down the corridor, following its silver glow toward a heavy iron door inscribed with more dark runes. The door wasn't locked. It didn't need to be, with the runes providing magical containment. Harry pushed it open slowly, the Nundu entering first, vapor at the ready. The ritual chamber was circular, its floor carved with an intricate pattern that spiraled toward a central dais. Upon the dais floated a swirling vortex of energy, black shot through with veins of sickly green and pulsing red. It resembled nothing so much as a miniature storm, contained within an invisible barrier. But what made Harry's blood run cold was the familiar feeling emanating from it, the same cold, empty hatred he'd felt in the graveyard when Voldemort returned. The same malevolence he sensed through his scar connection. "It's part of him," Harry whispered, understanding instinctively. "They've extracted a portion of Voldemort's power and contained it here." The Nundu growled, sensing the dark energy. Its vapor thickened, swirling agitatedly as it approached the dais. Harry realized what he was seeing, the foundation of the counterspell Draco had warned them about. Voldemort had sacrificed a portion of his own magical essence to create a weapon that could corrupt Harry's Patronus. A direct connection to the Dark Wizard himself. And now Harry had the opportunity to destroy it. The Nundu seemed to understand his thoughts, moving closer to the contained vortex, its silver vapor reaching toward the darkness. But as the mist touched the invisible barrier, something unexpected happened. The vortex pulsed violently, and Harry's scar exploded with pain. He dropped to his knees, feeling Voldemort's rage and awareness surge through their connection. The Dark Wizard knew Harry was there, could sense him through the extracted power. Through the haze of pain, Harry saw the vortex changing, tendrils of darkness reaching out toward the Nundu. The Patronus stood its ground, vapor meeting darkness in a clash of opposing energies. But instead of dissipating the darkness, the vapor seemed to be absorbed by it, the Nundu's silver light dimming with each passing second. With horror, Harry realized what was happening. The contained essence was inverting the Nundu's power, just as Draco had warned, turning it from protection to corruption. If the process completed, the Patronus would be forever tainted, and through it, Harry's own magic. No! Harry shouted, forcing himself to his feet despite the pain. Finite incantatem. The spell had no effect on the vortex. The Nundu was weakening, its form growing transparent as its power was drained and corrupted. Harry could feel the darkness seeping through their connection, cold tendrils reaching for his own magical core. In desperation, Harry remembered Dumbledore's words, hold to that distinction, not from a desire to punish, but from a need to protect. Protection. Not just of himself, but of everything the Patronus represented, hope, joy, the capacity for light even in darkness. The embodiment of his parents' love that had saved him as a baby and sustained him ever since. Harry closed his eyes, focusing not on fighting the darkness but on strengthening the light. He poured every positive memory, every moment of love and friendship into the connection with his Patronus. His parents' faces in the mirror of erased. Ron and Hermione standing beside him through countless dangers. The Weasleys welcoming him into their family. Sirius offering him a home. Expecto Patronum, he whispered, not to create a new Patronus but to reinforce what the spell truly meant, I await a protector. I expect light. The Nundu responded. Its form solidified, silver light blazing brighter. The vapor pouring from its mouth changed from mist to concentrated essence, meeting the dark tendrils not in combat but in transformation. Where they touched, the darkness didn't dissipate but transmuted, converted back into neutral magical energy that swirled harmlessly before fading. The vortex shrank, its power receding as the Nundu continued the process of magical neutralization. Within seconds, the contained essence had diminished to a fraction of its original size. With a final surge of effort, the Nundu exhaled a powerful stream of vapor directly into the heart of the vortex. The darkness collapsed in on itself, imploding with a silent concussion that rippled through the chamber. Harry's scar burned one final time, then the pain vanished completely. Where the vortex had been, only a small, dark crystal remained, inert, its power gone. The Nundu turned to Harry, looking somehow different. Its silver eyes seemed clearer, more defined, its form both more solid and more ethereal simultaneously. It had changed during the confrontation, evolved yet again. Let's go, Harry told it, suddenly aware of how long he'd been separated from the others. We're done here. They raced back up the corridor to find the basement empty. Ron had successfully evacuated the prisoners. Harry took the stairs two at a time, the Nundu bounding ahead. The ground floor was a battlefield. Lupin and Tonks fought back-to-back against a swarm of homunculi, their spells creating a perimeter of light that the constructs couldn't penetrate. Beyond them, Ron and Draco were guiding the weakened prisoners toward the front door. Harry! Ron called. About time. Where's the extraction point? Harry asked, directing the Nundu to clear a path through the homunculi. The Patronus's vapor was even more effective now, dissolving the constructs instantly upon contact. 300 yards past the ward line, Lupin answered between spells. Order members waiting with port keys. With the Nundu clearing their way, they fought through to the exit. Outside, the night had grown colder, the moon now hidden behind thick clouds that promised more snow. They ran through the darkness, Harry maintaining the Patronus despite his growing exhaustion. Behind them, the hunting lodge erupted in black flames, not a natural fire, but something born of the destabilized magic Harry had left behind in the ritual chamber. The wards around the property flickered and failed as the dark magic consuming the building interfered with their foundation. They reached the extraction point to find Arthur Weasley and Bill waiting with port keys, ordinary objects enchanted for emergency transport. Everyone grab hold. Arthur commanded. The wards are collapsing, anti-apparition field going with them. They clustered around the port keys, an old boot and a dented tea kettle. Harry was about to dismiss the Nundu when he sensed something, a familiar, cold presence approaching rapidly. Dementors, he shouted. Coming fast from the north. Indeed, dark shapes were gliding across the snow-covered hills, at least 20 of them moving with unnatural speed toward the fleeing group. The port keys aren't activated yet, Bill said tensely. 30 more seconds on the timer. I'll hold them off, Harry decided, directing the Nundu to position itself between their group and the approaching Dementors. Get everyone ready to leave the moment the port keys activate. The Dementors sensed the Patronus and hesitated momentarily, but their numbers gave them confidence. They spread out, attempting to flank the group and cut off escape. Harry, there's too many, Lupin warned. The Nundu can't get them all before the port keys activate. It doesn't need to get them all, Harry replied. Just keep them at bay for 30 seconds. But as the Dementors closed in, Harry felt a familiar pull, the desire to let the Nundu unleash its full power, to destroy these creatures completely rather than simply repelling them. The same temptation he'd felt facing Bellatrix, facing the homunculi, facing the vortex of Voldemort's essence. Power. Vengeance. The capacity to eliminate threats permanently rather than merely defending against them. And once again, Dumbledore's warning echoed in his mind, hold to that distinction. Harry made his choice. Defend only, he commanded the Nundu. Form a perimeter. No pursuit. The Patronus obeyed, positioning itself to create a barrier of silver light and protective vapor that the Dementors couldn't penetrate. It was enough, a temporary shield rather than a deadly weapon, but all they needed to survive. 5 seconds. Bill called, the port keys beginning to glow blue with activation magic. The Dementors, sensing their prey about to escape, surged forward in a final, desperate attack. One broke through, skeletal hand reaching for Xenophilius Lovegood, who was too weak to defend himself. Without conscious thought, Harry directed the Nundu to intervene. The massive Patronus leapt between the Dementor and its intended victim, silver vapor engulfing the dark creature. The Dementor dissolved into nothingness, gone forever. Now! Arthur shouted as the port keys flashed. Harry dismissed the Patronus with his last ounce of strength, grabbing the edge of the tea kettle just as the familiar hook behind the navel sensation of port key travel yanked them away from danger. Hogwarts hospital wing was crowded but quiet. The rescued prisoners occupied beds along one wall, being treated by Madame Pomfrey and a St. Mungo's specialist brought in specifically for the occasion. Order members came and went, debriefing the former captives and strengthening the castle's defenses. Harry sat on a bed near the window, watching dawn break over the grounds. He'd been treated for magical exhaustion, apparently maintaining the Nundu Patronus for so long, and through such intense magical confrontations, had depleted his core significantly. But rest and chocolate were already restoring his strength. "How are you feeling?" Hermione asked, settling beside him with a thick book in her lap. She'd been researching non-stop during their mission, her eyes now ringed with dark circles. "Better," Harry replied. "How's the research going?" Her expression brightened with intellectual excitement. "That's actually why I came to find you. What you described happening in the ritual chamber, the way the Nundu neutralized Voldemort's essence rather than destroying it, that's the key. The key to what? To modifying the Patronus safely. She opened the book, revealing ancient diagrams of magical flows and transformations. The Nundu already has the intrinsic ability to discern magical intent. It demonstrated that by converting Voldemort's power back to neutral magic instead of being corrupted by it. So what does that mean practically? Harry asked, struggling to follow her theory through his fatigue. It means we don't need complicated blood magic to make your Patronus selectively target Death Eaters, she explained eagerly. We just need to help it recognize the difference between those who took the mark willingly versus those coerced. And how do we do that? Hermione glanced toward a bed at the far end of the wing, where Draco sat alone, staring at his dark mark with a haunted expression. We need a volunteer. Understanding dawned. Malfoy. He wants the mark removed, or at least neutralized, Hermione reminded him. If we could use the Nundu's ability to sense intent while examining his mark, calibrate it to recognize the magical signature of coercion versus willing service. It could target only true Death Eaters while leaving those like Draco unharmed, Harry finished, seeing the elegant solution. But is it safe? For him, I mean. Safer than what we originally planned with blood magic, Hermione assured him. And he's willing to take the risk. I already asked him. Harry considered this. The idea of working with Malfoy, trusting him enough to forge a magical connection through the Nundu, would have been unthinkable weeks ago. But Draco had proven himself during the mission, fighting alongside them despite his fear, guiding them accurately through the lodge's defenses. All right, Harry agreed. When do we try? Tonight, Hermione said. During the Hunter's Moon. Harry frowned. But the Hunter's Moon was in October. It's January now. Hermione shook her head. The Hunter's Moon isn't just a calendar designation, it's a magical phenomenon that occurs when protective magic is at its peak potency. And according to Professor Sinistra, tonight's lunar alignment creates a secondary Hunter's Moon effect, rare, but powerful. You've been busy, Harry remarked, impressed as always by her thoroughness. We all have, she replied with a small smile. Ron's been coordinating with the Order, developing tactical applications for the modified Patronus. And Dumbledore. She hesitated. He's been preparing for something. He won't say what, but he's been locked in his office with Snape for hours. Before Harry could respond, the hospital wing doors opened to admit Ron, accompanied by Lupin and, surprisingly, Percy Weasley. The latter looked distinctly uncomfortable in his ministry robes, clutching an official-looking folder. Harry, Ron greeted him. How are you feeling? Well enough, Harry replied, eyeing Percy curiously. What's going on? Percy cleared his throat, every inch the ministry official despite the awkwardness of his position. Mr. Potter, as your assigned ministry observer, I'm required to deliver this formal notice regarding your classification status. He handed Harry a sealed envelope bearing the ministry crest. Harry broke the seal and scanned the contents, his eyebrows rising. They're reclassifying me again, he asked, looking up in disbelief. From magical being of interest to strategic magical asset? What does that even mean? It means, Lupin explained with a hint of amusement, that the ministry has decided your Nundu Patronus is too valuable to restrict. They're officially authorizing its use in defensive operations against Death Eaters. With appropriate oversight, of course, Percy added hastily. Of course, Harry echoed, the irony not lost on him. Months of treating him like a dangerous anomaly, only to now consider him an asset. And what about the Order prisoners we rescued? Has the ministry interviewed them yet? That's the other reason we're here, Lupin said, his expression growing serious. Ollivander has confirmed what you discovered in the ritual chamber. Voldemort was developing a way to corrupt your Patronus, to turn its power against you and anyone it was meant to protect. By destroying that essence, you've set his plans back significantly, Percy continued, dropping some of his official manner. But the minister believes, and the Order agrees, that he'll try again. Which means... We need to strike first, Ron finished. Before he develops another countermeasure. Strike how? Harry asked, though he suspected the answer. A direct assault on Voldemort himself, Lupin confirmed. Using your Patronus not just as a weapon against Death Eaters, but as a tracking device to locate Voldemort through the Dark Mark connection. Harry absorbed this. They were proposing using the Nundu Patronus offensively, exactly what Dumbledore had warned might damage his soul. Yet the alternative was waiting for Voldemort to develop a new weapon, one that might succeed where the ritual chamber experiment had failed. There's more, Percy said, glancing at the folder he still held. Intelligence reports suggest Voldemort is planning a major offensive. Multiple targets, coordinated attacks. Possibly within days. The Ministry finally taking the threat seriously? Harry asked with a hint of bitterness. The Ministry, Percy replied with surprising frankness, is terrified. Half the department heads have gone into hiding. The Wisengamot can't maintain quorum. And the aura force is stretched beyond breaking point. Which means, Lupin added gently, that this falls to the Order. And to you, Harry. The weight of expectation pressed down on Harry once again. Always him, always his responsibility. Yet this time felt different. This time he had power, real power, to affect the outcome. I need to talk to Dumbledore, he decided. Before we do anything else. He anticipated that, Lupin said with a small smile. He's waiting for you in his office whenever you're ready. Harry nodded, making his decision. Tonight then. We'll try Hermione's modification during the Hunter's Moon. And then. He took a deep breath. Then we find Voldemort. The room of requirement had transformed itself into a ritual space, circular, with a domed ceiling enchanted to show the night sky above. The nearly full moon shone through, casting silver light across the stone floor where an intricate pattern had been drawn using powdered moonstone and silver dust. Harry stood at one point of a triangle formation, Draco at another, Hermione at the third. In the center knelt Dumbledore, placing the final touches on the ritual design with a steady hand belying his age. The pattern channels magical intent, he explained, straightening slowly. It will help the Patronus distinguish between magical signatures bound to the Dark Mark. Ron watched from the edge of the circle, along with McGonagall, Snape, and Lupin. Each held their wand ready, prepared to intervene if anything went wrong. Remember, Dumbledore addressed Harry directly, this is not about attacking or destroying. It is about discernment, teaching your Patronus to recognize the difference between willingly chosen darkness and coerced service. I understand, Harry replied, centering himself. The events in the ritual chamber had taught him that the Nundu's power wasn't fundamentally destructive, it could neutralize and transform as well as destroy. Draco looked nervous but determined, his sleeve rolled up to expose the dark mark on his forearm. It writhed slightly in the moonlight, the snake moving as if uncomfortable with what was about to happen. Are you sure about this? Harry asked him quietly. Draco nodded. I want it gone. Or at least, changed. Whatever your Patronus did to Bellatrix's mark, it severed her connection to the Dark Lord. That's worth any risk. Hermione took her position, holding an ancient text Dumbledore had provided. The ritual is simple, she explained. Harry casts the Patronus. I recite the discernment incantation. Draco provides the mark as a template for the magic to analyze. The Patronus learns to distinguish compulsion from choice. And then? Ron asked from the sidelines. And then, Dumbledore replied, we have a weapon that targets only those who have freely chosen Voldemort's service, those whose souls are already damaged by their willing embrace of darkness. It was an elegant solution to the moral problem that had haunted Harry. Not indiscriminate destruction, but precise justice, affecting only those who had made the choice to serve Voldemort knowing what that service entailed. We begin when the moon reaches its zenith, Dumbledore said, moving to join the observers. In approximately 3 minutes. Those minutes passed in tense silence. Harry focused on controlling his breathing, preparing mentally for the complex magic ahead. When a chime sounded, conjured by McGonagall to mark the precise moment, he raised his wand. Expecto Patronum. The Nundu materialized in the center of the ritual circle, larger and more defined than ever before. Its silver light illuminated the room, reflecting off the powdered moonstone to create a web of light connecting the 3 points of the triangle. Vapor poured from its mouth, but instead of flowing outward, it curled inward, forming a shimmering sphere around the Patronus itself. Hermione began the incantation, ancient words in a language Harry didn't recognize, her voice steady and clear. The ritual pattern began to glow, lines of silver fire tracing the geometric design on the floor. Draco extended his arm, the dark mark fully exposed. The Nundu turned toward it, silver eyes studying the magical signature bound to Draco's flesh. Through their connection, Harry could sense what the Patronus was perceiving, layers of magic, some Voldemort's, some Draco's own, intertwined in a complex binding. Hermione's incantation intensified, the words seeming to physically manifest as threads of light that connected Draco's mark to the Nundu's perception. Harry focused on directing the Patronus to analyze rather than attack, to understand the magical signature of coercion embedded in the mark. The Nundu exhaled a thin stream of vapor toward Draco's arm. Where it touched the mark, the design shifted, the snake writhing as if in pain, the skull seeming to grimace. Draco gasped but held steady, his face pale with determination. Through the Patronus, Harry could now see the distinction, a magical resonance that signified Draco's resistance to the mark, his fear when receiving it, his reluctance in service. That signature was fundamentally different from what Harry had sensed in Bellatrix or the Death Eaters at the Burrow, whose marks carried the resonance of willing acceptance, of embraced darkness. The Nundu absorbed this knowledge, its silver eyes reflecting complex patterns of magical understanding. The vapor surrounding it shifted color slightly, still silver, but now with subtle variations that seemed to respond to different magical signatures in the room. Hermione completed the incantation with a final, powerful phrase that echoed through the chamber. The ritual pattern flashed brilliantly, then faded back to inert powder. The Nundu stood motionless in the center, its transformation complete. It worked, Hermione breathed, lowering the ancient text. I can feel the difference in its magical signature. As can I, Dumbledore agreed, stepping forward to examine the Patronus with evident fascination. Most remarkable. It has developed the ability to discern not just dark marks, but the intent behind them. What about Draco's mark? Ron asked, pointing to where Malfoy was examining his forearm with wide eyes. The dark mark had changed. While still visible, it no longer moved or writhed. The black had faded to a dull gray, and the design itself seemed flatter, less dimensional, as if it were now merely a tattoo rather than a living magical connection. It's quiet, Draco said wonderingly. I can't feel him anymore. The constant presence in the back of my mind, it's gone. The connection has been severed, Snape confirmed, examining Draco's arm with professional interest. His own sleeve remained firmly buttoned, though everyone present knew he bore the same mark. Not destroyed, but neutralized. Most impressive. Can you still use magic? Harry asked, concerned despite their past enmity. Draco drew his wand and cast a simple lumos. The wand tip lit normally, showing no impediment to his magical ability. It worked, he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. It actually worked. And the Nundu? Lupin asked. Has it retained its ability to affect active marks? Yes, Harry confirmed, sensing the Patronus's capabilities through their connection. But now it can distinguish between types of marks. It will only affect those willingly taken. Then we have our weapon, McGonagall said soberly. The question now is how to deploy it. Dumbledore's expression grew grave. That question may be answered sooner than we anticipated. While you were conducting this ritual, I received word from our sources within the Ministry. Voldemort has begun his offensive, coordinated attacks across Britain, targeting both magical and Muggle institutions. Where? Harry demanded, already dreading the answer. Everywhere, Dumbledore replied simply. Diagon Alley. Hogsmeade. The Ministry itself. St. Mungo's. And. He hesitated, Hogwarts. Our wards have detected concentrated magical activity at the boundaries. They're testing for weaknesses. He's coming here, Harry realized. For me. For the Patronus. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. Which gives us both a challenge and an opportunity. If Voldemort himself leads the assault on Hogwarts, we can end this, Harry finished. Tonight. The weight of the moment settled over the room. What had begun as an experiment in Patronus modification had become the prelude to a final confrontation. The weapon was ready. The enemy was at the gates. All that remained was to meet them. Alert the order, Dumbledore instructed McGonagall. Minerva, begin evacuation procedures for the younger students. Severus, you know what must be done. Snape nodded grimly and departed without another word. Harry wondered briefly what special task Dumbledore had assigned him, but there was no time to ask. Mr. Malfoy, Dumbledore continued, you have a choice to make. You fulfilled your part in this ritual admirably, but what comes next is not your fight unless you choose to make it so. Draco looked at the neutralized mark on his arm, then at Harry and his friends. The history between them hung in the air, years of rivalry and hatred, but also the recent cooperation that had saved lives. My mother, he asked simply. Safe, Dumbledore assured him. And will remain so regardless of your decision. Draco straightened his shoulders. Then I'll fight. Not for you, he added quickly, glancing at Harry, but against him. For taking my choice away in the first place. Harry nodded, a new respect forming for his former nemesis. Ron, we need your tactical planning. How do we use the Nundu most effectively in a castle defense? Ron's strategic mind engaged immediately. Hogwarts has multiple entry points, we need to concentrate our forces at the most vulnerable. The Nundu can move quickly between locations, neutralizing Death Eaters and Dementors as it goes. We should establish a command center, Hermione suggested. Somewhere central with visibility of the grounds. The astronomy tower, Lupin proposed. Highest vantage point in the castle. As they quickly developed a defensive strategy, Harry maintained the Nundu Patronus, conserving his energy while keeping it manifested. Through their connection, he could sense the Patronus's new capabilities, its enhanced perception of magical signatures, its ability to distinguish between willing and coerced dark marks. It felt more like a true extension of himself than ever before, not just a projection of magic but a manifestation of his deepest protective instinct. And tonight, that instinct would be tested as never before. The Great Hall had been transformed into an emergency command center. House tables were pushed aside to make room for maps of the castle and grounds, enchanted to show real-time movement of defenders and, soon, attackers. Students 6th year and above who had chosen to stay and fight were organized into defense squads, each led by a professor or order member. Younger students were being evacuated through a secret passage to Hogsmeade, from where they would be transported to safe houses via portkey. The sound of their frightened voices echoed through the corridors, a reminder of exactly what was at stake. Harry stood with Dumbledore at the enchanted map, watching as magical sensors around the castle perimeter registered increasing activity. The Nundu Patronus remained at his side, silver vapor curling from its mouth, ready to be deployed. They're concentrating forces at the main gates and the covered bridge, Dumbledore observed, pointing to red indicators on the map. Classic pincer movement, divide our defenders between two fronts. And Voldemort himself? Harry asked. Not yet detected, Dumbledore replied. He will come last, when he believes the way has been prepared for him. Ron approached, accompanied by Neville, who had volunteered to lead a squad of DA members in defending the greenhouses, a less obvious entry point that might be targeted. First perimeter wards are failing, Ron reported. They've got cursebreakers working on the outer defenses. Bill says they're good, professional grade. How long do we have? Harry asked. An hour, maybe less, Ron estimated. The inner wards will hold longer, but they're bringing serious firepower. Giants, Neville added grimly. At least 3, approaching from the Forbidden Forest side. And Hagrid says he's spotted werewolves gathering, even though it's not a full moon. Greyback's forces use partial transformation techniques, Lupin explained, joining them. Less powerful than full moon transformation, but still deadly. Harry took in this information, modifying his mental strategy. The Nundu would be effective against Death Eaters with dark marks, but giants and werewolves were another matter entirely. We need to prioritize targets, he decided. The Nundu focuses on marked Death Eaters. Conventional defenses handle the giants and werewolves. Agreed, Dumbledore said. And when Voldemort appears? The question hung in the air. Everyone present understood that the ultimate confrontation would be between Harry and Voldemort, it had been prophesied, after all. But how the Nundu Patronus would factor into that confrontation remained uncertain. I'll handle Voldemort, Harry said quietly. One way or another. The castle shook suddenly, dust falling from the ancient ceiling. Outside, a flash of light illuminated the windows, followed by a distant boom. They've breached the outer wards, Dumbledore announced. Positions, everyone. The battle for Hogwarts has begun. As defenders rushed to their assigned locations, Harry turned to Ron and Hermione, suddenly aware that this might be their last moment together before chaos engulfed them. Whatever happens, he said, I couldn't have done any of this without you. Both of you. Save the speeches for after we win, Ron replied gruffly, though his eyes betrayed his emotion. We've got a plan. It's a good one. Let's execute it. Hermione simply hugged Harry fiercely. Be careful. The Nundu's powerful, but it's not invincible. And neither are you. Harry nodded, returning her embrace before they separated, each to their appointed task. Ron to coordinate defense squads from the Great Hall. Hermione to maintain communication charms linking defenders throughout the castle. And Harry to the astronomy tower, where he could deploy the Nundu most effectively across the battlefield. As he climbed the spiral stairs, the Patronus padding silently beside him, Harry felt a strange calm descend. After months of struggling with the Nundu's meaning and purpose, tonight everything was clear. The power had come to him for this moment, to protect those he loved, to face darkness without becoming it himself. From the astronomy tower's observation platform, the scope of the attack became frighteningly clear. Dark figures swarmed at the edges of the castle grounds, held back temporarily by the inner wards but pressing forward relentlessly. Giants hurled boulders that exploded against magical shields, each impact weakening the defenses. Dementors circled overhead, waiting for an opening. And weaving among the attackers were the unmistakable silver masks of Death Eaters, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Lupin joined Harry at the parapet, his wand ready. Kingsley reports the Ministry has fallen completely. Scrimgeour is dead. The Auror force scattered. So no reinforcements, Harry concluded grimly. We fight with what we have, Lupin affirmed. But Harry, he hesitated, even with the Nundu, we're outnumbered at least 5 to 1. Then we make every strike count, Harry replied, focusing on the Patronus beside him. Ready? The Nundu growled in response, its silver eyes fixed on the battlefield below, vapor thickening in anticipation. The castle shook again, more violently this time. A section of the wards visible as a shimmering dome over the grounds flickered and collapsed, creating an opening near the covered bridge. There through, came Neville's voice through the communication charm. Westside defenses engaging. The battle erupted in earnest. Spellfire lit the night like deadly fireworks, red and green streaks marking killing curses and stunning spells. Giants breached the tree line, massive clubs swinging. And Death Eaters poured through the ward breach, their dark robes billowing as they charged toward the castle. Now, Harry commanded, directing the Nundu toward the largest concentration of Death Eaters. Go. The Patronus leapt from the tower in a single bound, its spectral form gliding through the air with impossible grace. It landed among the attackers, silver vapor already pouring from its mouth in thick clouds that rolled across the battlefield. Through their connection, Harry could sense the Nundu's new discernment in action. The vapor passed harmlessly over those with coerced marks, mostly younger Death Eaters and a few who radiated fear rather than malice. But where it touched the willing, something went wrong with this response. Please try again. Begin the next chapter right away. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.